the pure campus beauty, completely ignoring the torrential downpour, dashed straight to my doorstep, just a plea to spend a single night at my place. But, in an act of pure stupidity, I turned her away. The very next morning, she was found brutally murdered in the narrow alley right outside my house. From that day on, I was consumed by suffocating guilt and regret. After pushing myself to get into the police academy, I became utterly obsessed with hunting down the real killer. But the heavy rain had washed away every single trace of evidence, leaving me with absolutely zero clues for 15 long years. Suddenly, a violent bolt of lightning struck, sending me straight back to this fateful turning point in my life. Classmate Gu, I heard your parents are working out of town, and that you're currently staying here all by yourself. Could you please let me crash at your place for just a few days? I promise I can do all the chores to make up for it. I stared at the girl standing before me. Instinctively, I reached my hand out to touch Bai Wei. She flinched, wanting to back away out of sheer reflex. But because she was desperate for help, she grit her teeth and forced herself to stand completely still. An icy sensation rushed through my fingertips, and her subtle, trembling reaction vividly confirmed to me that she was indeed still alive. I had actually traveled back in time. Em sorry. Panicking, Bai Wei scrambled backward, lost her footing, and slipped. Moving like lightning, I grabbed her by the waist and pulled her flush against my chest, right in the middle of the pouring rain. A heavy, breathless silence fell between us. She froze in my arms, completely paralyzed and not daring to move. I quickly released my grip and stepped back under the porch light. You looked freezing, so I instinctively want to warm you up. I'm really sorry. I sidestepped, gesturing for her to come inside, staring at her pale, utterly bloodless face. My mind began to race furiously. In my past life, after the killer committed this horrific crime in Shanghai City, he vanished off the face of the earth without a trace. This time, I wasn't just going to save her life. I was going to use my 15 years of veteran criminal
investigation experience
to stakes out the crime scene tonight and catch the monster red-handed. Bai Wei stood anxiously at the entrance, nervously twisting the hem of her damp shirt, watching me turn around to grab her a pair of slippers. She became even more flustered and anxious. My socks are completely soaked, and I'll ruin your slippers. I should just walk in barefoot, and I'll mop up the floor for you in a bit. Being trapped in a house alone with a guy, late at night, completely drenched from head to toe, had pushed her anxiety to an absolute breaking point. She dug her fingernails deep into her palms, desperately forcing herself to stay composed. Taking advantage of me turning around, she quickly scanned her surroundings with a sharp sweep of her eyes, only relaxing her incredibly rigid posture when her gaze landed on the warm teacup on the table and a few scattered, messy cardboard boxes. Here's a towel for your hair. If you don't mind, use this for now. Could I also borrow a change of clothes? Mine are getting a bit too damp. Only then did I finally notice how tightly she was clutching her soaking wet blouse. Since you have to change anyway, why don't you go ahead and take a hot shower? Otherwise, you're definitely going to catch a nasty cold. There's no shower in the main living area, so you'll have to use the bathroom in my bedroom. I'll go start the hot water. Hearing she had to use my private bathroom, Bai Wei flushed crimson, ducking her head and murmuring a soft reply. As the sound of splashing water echoed from the bathroom, Bai Wei stared at my busy, occupied back, finally gathering every ounce of her courage. Classmate Gu, just call me by my name. You want to ask why I haven't questioned your reasons for coming here, right? Bai Wei looked up in absolute astonishment, nodding her head with eyes full of intense curiosity. A beautiful girl like you, showing up on a rainy night, pleading to crash at my place. You must have a highly classified, desperate reason, since it's clearly hard for you to talk about. Prying into it would just be incredibly rude of me. Hearing those words, Bai Wei's eyes instantly welled up with tears. Having perfectly dialed in the water temperature, I stood up and slowly walked right up to her, abruptly slamming my hand against the wall beside her ear, and completely trapping her within my frame. I'm not worried about you having hidden motives, but aren't you terrified that by staying here, I might actually have some wicked designs on you? Bai Wei pressed herself against the wall, gently biting her lip, as she felt a sudden surge of heat rush through her body. I trust you. Her gorgeous eyes locked onto mine with a sudden, daring intensity. That bold, unwavering answer of hers instantly shut down any further teasing on my part, realizing that tonight I still had an incredibly critical mission to pull off. I smirked and pulled my hand back. Go get showered. Here's your change of clothes. With your petite frame, this oversized hoodie will easily double as a dress. Just wear this for now and toss your wet clothes into the washing machine and dryer. They should be ready in no time. Thank you so much, Bai Wei murmured, turning into the bathroom. That thank you was half out of gratitude for a safe haven, and half for my unexpected understanding and respect. Hearing the soothing sound of rushing water from the shower, I let out a soft smile, stepping out of the bedroom to brew some hot ginger tea. A little while later, the bathroom door clicked open. Bai Wei stepped out, swallowed up by my massive, baggy hoodie. Her cheeks were beautifully flushed from the steam, the rosy glow contrasting perfectly with her milky white, bare knees. I've set out these slippers for you. Bai Wei slipped her feet into the plush, pre-warmed slippers, and a massive chunk of her lingering anxiety immediately vanished. The moment she stepped out of the bedroom, the rich, comforting aroma of ginger honey tea hit her senses. I walked over, carrying the steaming mug, my eyes briefly catching the loose collar of the oversized hoodie, causing my throat to tighten slightly. Here, drink some of this hot ginger tea to warm up. Bai Wei accepted the mug, taking small, cautious sips. Do you want me to whip up some instant ramen for you? Won't that be too much trouble? Of course not. It'll only take a couple of minutes. Just sit tight, and I'll toss in 2 eggs for you. Just as I stood up, a small, delicate hand gently pulled at my arm. I know how to fry eggs. Let me help you out. Standing together in the kitchen, my exceptionally fluid and rapid knife skills left Bai Wei completely spellbound. The blade danced across the cutting board, neatly slicing through tomatoes and ham in the blink of an eye. Bai Wei stepped up onto a small stool, stretching on her tiptoes to reach the egg carton on the top shelf. As she reached upward, the hem of the baggy hoodie naturally rode way up. I glanced over, and my face instantly flushed red. Bai Wei, seemingly catching on to where my eyes had wandered, panicked and frantically yanked her hem down, causing her to lose her footing on the wobbling stool. I frantically lunged forward, reaching out from behind to catch her, but my hand accidentally slipped and landed on a highly sensitive, intimate spot. Her body instantly went limp as she collapsed directly into my embrace. In that split second, I recognized it. That rich sandalwood scent mingled with the citrus notes of her body wash. Both of us froze completely, utterly paralyzed, until the water in the ramen pot began boiling over, violently splashing sizzling droplets onto the hot stove, finally shattering this incredibly tense, suffocating atmosphere. I quickly pulled my hands back, taking a half step away, and hurriedly shoved the ladle into her trembling hand. You stir this. I'll grab the eggs. As I turned away, I caught a fleeting glimpse of my own crimson-red ears in the reflection. It turned out that all these years, it wasn't that I was completely immune to women. It was just that no other person on earth had ever been able to make my heart skip a beat like this. With a burning red face, Bai Wei hung her head and stirred the noodles. The loud sizzling of the pan perfectly masked the frantic, erratic thumping of her heart. The rich aroma of tomato ramen quickly engulfed the entire kitchen. I set the steaming bowl of noodles down on the table for her, carefully avoiding her trembling fingers. Careful, it's scorching. Feel free to find a channel you like. The moment the TV screen flared to life, Bai Wei's grip on her chopsticks suddenly tightened. Mouth-wateringly displayed on the screen was the very thing I had forgotten to close: my secret adult study materials. And the scene playing was incredibly, undeniably spicy. I let out an incredibly awkward, dry cough, scrambling to switch over to the movie selection menu. I hastily clicked on a Shin-chan cartoon to cover it up. My God, I had completely forgotten. Back then, it was precisely the fear of her discovering this shameful secret that made me turn the campus beauty away from my door. Fortunately, after 15 years of surviving the real world, my skin had grown incredibly thick, without flushing, and with my heartbeat steady, I acted like absolutely nothing had happened. As I rapidly flipped through the channels, Bai Wei also desperately tried to change the subject, stammering, I had no idea you were such an incredible cook. I grabbed a tissue and gently wiped away the tiny beads of sweat forming on the bridge of her nose. Look at you, sweating like that. At least the chill in your body is completely gone now. Take your time eating. There's plenty left in the pot. She focused entirely on devouring the hot noodles, completely cleaning out the entire bowl, gulping down every last drop of broth with absolute satisfaction. Whoa, are you already full? The moment the words left her mouth, a deafening crack of thunder violently shook the windows. I instinctively glanced up at the wall clock, 9:57 p.m. There were barely 30 minutes left before the exact moment the tragedy occurred in my past life. In this lifetime, I'm absolutely going to unmask that monstrous killer. With time rapidly slipping away, I had to move immediately and head straight to the crime scene to stake it out. I quickly grabbed a glass of water and a warm blanket, gently draping it over her shoulders. Since you're full, just chill out and watch some TV in the living room. I'll do the dishes later. I need to run out for a quick late-night snack run. I'll be back before you know it. In this insane downpour, you're still going out? Don't worry, it's just right around the corner. Reaching the front door, I suddenly froze and turned back around. I was terrified that the killer had planned this attack far in advance, and might have even stalked her all the way to this very neighborhood. Listen to me carefully before I get back. Absolutely do not open the door, no matter who rings the bell. I have my keys, so I won't be ringing it. Hearing my dead serious, protective warning, Byway nodded obediently like a frightened little kitten, wrapping herself even tighter inside the warm fleece blanket as the front door clicked shut, leaving her in the quiet apartment. She curled into a tight ball on the sofa, silently waiting for my return. I popped open my black umbrella and stepped into the raging storm, stealing a quick glance at my rugged waterproof watch. The time was exactly 21:58 p.m. In my past life, the forensics team estimated that Byway's time of death was roughly around 10:30 p.m. My primary objective tonight was a specific shop, along the exact path she was destined to take in a previous timeline, the local 24-hour convenience store. In that past life, Byway had borrowed an umbrella from there, grabbed a quick bite, and then headed straight toward that fatal alley. Even though she was safely locked inside my apartment tonight, I had to verify if the timeline would attempt some sort of sick cosmic correction, forcing an innocent scapegoat to die in Byway's place. At that very location, I absolutely, under any circumstances, would not let that happen. As I hurried down the street, I pulled out my phone to check the security camera. Inside my apartment, on the screen, Byway was hugging her knees, sitting quietly on the sofa, bathed in the dim glow of the TV. Once I confirmed she was staying put and not wandering off, I immediately accelerated my pace. The moment I drew near the 24-hour convenience store, a harsh, aggressive shout echoed through the rain. Right next to the dumpster at the mouth of the alley, a fragile, scrawny figure was trembling on the wet asphalt. A pack of local delinquents had surrounded him, kicking him brutally, as their leader aggressively demanded to know what secret item he was clutching so tightly in his hand. The poor guy, pinned flat against the muddy ground, was holding onto a faded, light gray handkerchief like his life depended on it, with a small metal tin lying on the ground beside him. It was Yeezy. I recognized him instantly, the quiet, extremely reclusive loner in our class who was always targeted by school bullies. The moment my deep voice boomed through the alley, the punks whipped their heads around, their faces turning deathly pale in an instant. Because my family held serious sway and influence in Shanghai City, these low-level thugs usually feared me like the plague. Before I could even lower my umbrella, they scattered frantically like they had just seen a goddamn ghost, leaving only the heavy sound of rain pelting against the metal roof. I squatted down, holding the umbrella firmly over Yi Zi's trembling head. "Are you all right? Do you need me to take you to the hospital to get checked out?" On his thin wrist, I noticed a faint, jagged scar from a nasty burn he received 3 months ago. I reached out a hand to help him up, but he violently recoiled his arm as if he'd been electrocuted. The wooden box slammed violently against the wall, sending a few colored pencils and a half-empty bag of cat food rolling straight into a muddy puddle. Thank you," he mumbled, hanging his head as he scrambled for his backpack. His soaked, messy bangs heavily veiled the small mole near the corner of his eye. My eyes locked onto his hands, noticing a dark, brownish-red crust caked under his fingernails. It looked chillingly like dried, coagulated blood. In a brutal storm like this, you're still coming out here to feed stray cats? Yi let out a vague, barely audible mumble, suddenly hacking into a violent, chest-racking cough. His frail, bony shoulders shivering uncontrollably under the cold downpour. I unzipped my outer jacket and tossed it over his shivering frame. Put this on. Isn't your mother out of town on another business trip? If you end up getting sick, who's going to take care of your little brother? Suddenly, a chilling realization flashed through my mind, recalling the exact surveillance footage from my past life. In that previous timeline, right outside this very convenience store, seemed to have witnessed something shocking before heading toward the alley. Looking at Yi now, everything clicked inside my head in an instant. In that past life, Baiwei must have witnessed Yi getting brutally victimized by those thugs. In my mind, I rapidly reconstructed every single detail of the original case file. If in my previous life, Baiwei had rushed out of the convenience store, specifically to intervene and stop this assault, her completely drenched and vulnerable appearance likely escalated the thug's physical assault into a horrific sexual harassment scenario. I desperately tried to recall Yi's demeanor and physical state. On that fateful Monday in my past life, his injuries back then were far more severe than they were now. Yet he showed no significant emotional reaction whatsoever to the news of Baiwei's brutal murder. This heavily implied that in the original timeline, he had likely fought tooth and nail to hold off those vicious thugs, buying Baiwei enough time to escape their clutches. If those local thugs weren't actually the ones who killed her, then the real killer had to be someone else entirely. After rapidly connecting the dots, I immediately locked onto one crucial, game-changing clue: the murder weapon. On a stormy night like this, whoever was walking around carrying a concealed knife, that person is my absolute prime suspect. Realizing that those 3 trash-tier delinquents could very well be carrying blades on them, I instantly regretted letting them walk away so easily. As for the battered and bruised Yi in my past life, he managed to survive and graduate without further incident. For now, I had to temporarily leave him be. If you're okay, you need to get home immediately. Just as I took a step forward to leave, I paused, glanced at Yi's completely mangled umbrella, and shoved my own black umbrella straight into his hands. Your umbrella is trashed. Take mine. I've got urgent business, so I can't walk you back. Be careful and head straight home. Without giving Yi a single second to protest, I lunged headfirst back into the torrential downpour and vanished into the dark sheets of rain. The 3 thugs couldn't have made it very far, likely taking shelter under a nearby awning to escape the deluge. True enough, they were huddled together, swearing loudly and plotting whether they should throw a sack over my head and beat me to a bloody pulp. But they feared my family's massive influence and hesitated to strike. Right as they were trapped in their indecision, I sprinted forward with explosive, blinding speed, charging directly in front of them. The 3 thugs jumped back in sheer terror, assuming I was there to extract revenge, frantically waving their hands and backing away. Hey, my 3 dear friends, mind if I borrow something from you for a second? The 3 of them exchanged extremely tense, guarded glances. I'm not here to borrow money. I need something else. All 3 stared back at me, their faces completely plastered with confusion. I locked my eyes onto them, flashing a seemingly harmless, casual grin. Blades. Got any knives? The 3 thugs stood frozen in absolute disbelief, utterly failing to comprehend my bizarre request. You 3 roam the streets like hardened gangsters. Yet you're telling me you stepped out tonight without carrying a single blade on you? My blatant provocation worked like an absolute charm. The green-haired punk, visibly annoyed, fished a flashy butterfly knife from his pocket and started showboating, spinning it aggressively in front of my face. With just a single calculated glance, I knew instantly this was absolutely not the weapon that left those clean, precise incisions, detailed in the forensic autopsy report. This butterfly knife was way too flashy and impractical. So I offered a 100 renminbi reward for any standard fruit-paring knife, promising a handsome payout. The remaining 2 delinquents immediately scrambled to pull out their gear. One brandished a multi-tool Swiss Army knife, while the other whipped out a tactical folding knife, both blades gleaming coldly in the dim light. Neither of these weapons matched the specific murder weapon I was hunting for. They're decent blades, but unfortunately, I only have a single 100 renminbi bill on me. Never mind, ignoring the furious, confused shouts of the thugs, who felt like they had just been utterly clowned. I turned on my heel and bolted back into the freezing, relentless downpour. Since none of those three carried the weapon, this particular lead had gone completely cold. An intense, burning anxiety began to constrict my chest. Honestly, the easiest way to solve this case would have been to reject Bai Wei exactly like in my past life, and tail her silently from the shadows, ambushing the real killer at the crime scene, and catching him red-handed. But now that I've been granted a second chance at life, the very moment I saw her standing there, safe and completely unharmed, I found myself completely unable to suppress the sudden, intense pounding of my heart. I would rather choose to hunt for clues like a needle in a haystack than ever gamble with her precious life, or expose her to even a single sliver of danger. I retraced my steps to the convenience store to buy some things. The warm-hearted cashier kindly handed me a clean towel, telling me to dry the freezing rain from my hair. I thanked him, wiped myself down, and slipped my phone securely into its waterproof sleeve. After that, I meticulously simulated every single movement and step Bai Wei would have taken in my past life before heading out, opening my umbrella once more as I stepped back into the raging storm. The moment I plunged back into the deluge, a violent gust of wind nearly snapped the metal ribs of my umbrella, stepping carefully over deep puddles and jagged shards of broken glass. I finally arrived at the starting point, the blind spot of the street camera. This was the exact chilling crime scene that had been repeatedly detailed and analyzed in the forensic trace evidence reports of my past life. My waterproof watch glowed faintly in the dark, displaying 22:17 p.m. The howling wind suddenly flipped my umbrella inside out, so I decisively tossed it aside, letting the freezing rain pelt directly against my face and head. My phone vibrated sharply inside its waterproof pouch. Leaning against the damp brick wall, I unlocked the screen to check the home feed, bathed in the warm, golden light of my apartment. Bai Wei was curled up tightly in the corner of the sofa, her feet rubbing together anxiously, as her eyes darted toward the front door over and over again. Her expression was a painful mix of quiet anticipation, laced with a heavy dose of deep, lingering worry. Just wait a little longer, and everything will be fine. Don't rush. The digital clock ticked over to 22:29 p.m. Suddenly, the sharp clink of metal echoed from the far end of the alley. I instantly went on high alert and crept closer, only to run directly into a very familiar face. Jiang Yan, the notorious, hot-tempered bully from Shanghai No. 2 High School. Right now, he was taking shelter under the overhang of an abandoned, half-constructed building, carelessly peeling an apple with a standard fruit-paring knife. Well, if it isn't old Goo, what the hell are you doing out in this crazy storm in the middle of the night? Wandering around without even an umbrella? Just running an errand. My umbrella got completely trashed by the wind. What about you? What are you doing out here so late? Jiang Yan lazily used the sharp tip of his blade to spear a shriveled apple from a plastic grocery bag. I knew his notorious reputation as a street thug was just a front. His family was dirt poor, and his mother was battling terminal uremia. Just brought some fruit to the old lady, but she kicked me out. The sides of his rain-soaked boots were covered in those non-slip strips, commonly found on hospital hallway floors, and his knife carried the distinct, clinical scent of disinfectant, straight from intensive care unit. However, my gaze remained completely locked onto the fruit-paring knife gripped tightly in his hand. The exact specifications of this blade perfectly matched the autopsy description of the weapon that killed Bai Wei. What are you doing standing in the rain? Hurry up and get under here. My place is right next door. Let me lend you an umbrella. The very second I stepped under the concrete overhang, Jiang Yan's phone suddenly rang with intense urgency. On the other end, a nurse's panicked, frantic voice delivered the news. His mother's blood acid levels had suddenly plummeted. Jiang Yan's face drained of color instantly. The fruit-paring knife slipped from his hand, splashing into a muddy puddle. Without even uttering a single word of goodbye, he spun around and bolted frantically into the howling storm. I bent down and fished the cold blade out of the muddy water. A chilling sensation pulsed through my fingers. After examining it meticulously under the dim street light, I confirmed with absolute certainty this specific time, this exact coordinates, and this precise dimensions and model. This was indeed the primary murder weapon that had ruthlessly ended Bai Wei's life in the previous timeline. Since Jiang Yin had accidentally discarded the weapon right here, then the actual murderer would most likely walk by within the next 30 minutes and retrieve it. Taking a deep breath, I tossed the knife back into the mud exactly where it lay. Relying on my years of seasoned detective instincts, I retreated into the shadows, silently setting up an ambush as the torrential rain hammered down. 22:35 p.m. A filthy, homeless man, reeking of cheap alcohol, stumbled blindly under the awning and collapsed onto the ground. He kicked over an empty beer can, his mud-caked canvas shoe stepping directly onto the knife's handle, forcing the sharp blade deep into the thick mud. He then grabbed his half-empty bottle and stumbled back out into the night. 22:47 p.m. A delivery driver slammed on his brakes to seek shelter, accidentally stepping on the hidden knife and taking a nasty spill. Cursing loudly, he scrambled back to his feet and kicked the blade straight into the narrow gap of a drainage grate, where a thick layer of sludge instantly buried it from view. The clock struck 22:55 p.m., with the knife completely submerged in mud. It would now be virtually impossible for anyone to stumble upon it by chance. We were now mere minutes away from the fateful moment of Bai Wei's death in my previous life. The final countdown had begun. Suddenly, a chilling silhouette clad in a dark raincoat materialized. The masked, shadowy figure emerged stealthily from the far end of the alley, completely unfazed by the downpour, and strode directly toward the mud-covered paring knife. He knelt down, reaching for the weapon. Every muscle in my body instantly coiled tight like a loaded spring. The exact moment his hand gripped the muddy hilt, his sleeve slipped back slightly, exposing a grotesque, jagged acid burn scar on his wrist. Overwhelmed by sheer shock, I abruptly stepped out of the shadows. Relying on the dim, flickering street lamp, I caught a clear glimpse of the face hidden beneath the rain hood. It was none other than the legendary model citizen of Shanghai No. 2 High School, our very own chemistry teacher, Li Mingyuan. A tempest of disbelief surged violently within my chest. 3 months ago, this man had selflessly shielded a student from a chemical mishap in the lab, getting his own arm severely burned by acid in the process. Afterward, he even gently comforted the guilt-ridden student who caused the accident. Known throughout the neighborhood as a mild-mannered, devoted husband, everyone spoke of him with nothing but absolute praise. But if he truly was the cold-blooded killer, every single unresolved mystery from my past life finally made perfect, terrifying sense. In the previous timeline, Bai Wei was ambushed inside this pitch-black alley, yet the crime scene showed absolutely no signs of a struggle or flight. That was because she let her guard down completely around this famously kind teacher. If Li Mingyuan had offered to share his raincoat with her and walk her back to his place to dry off, stranded and helpless as she was in that freezing, relentless storm, Bai Wei wouldn't have hesitated for a single second. Reaching this conclusion sent a sharp pang of grief through my heart. But I knew I couldn't afford to act rashly. After all, in this timeline, Li Mingyuan hadn't committed any crime yet. I decided to employ my advanced profiling techniques to probe his true motives for lurking in the dark so late at night. Teacher Li Mingyuan immediately snapped his head up. Upon seeing my drenched, shivering state, his face softened into an expression of genuine concern. Gu Nansheng, good heavens, how did you get so soaked? I had to run a quick errand, teacher, and got caught in the deluge. But what about you, Teacher Li? What brings you out in this crazy storm? I locked my eyes onto his face, scanning for the slightest micro-expression, and immediately caught a subtle, fleeting flash of hesitation behind his eyes. Oh, nothing much. Just came out to grab a pack of cigarettes. He was lying. Teacher Li Mingyuan didn't smoke at all. He was widely known as a clean-living, devoted family man. My raincoat is pretty oversized anyway. So get under here and shield yourself from the storm. I'll walk you back to my place, then lend you a dry coat to wear home. He maintained his signature gentle, warm-hearted demeanor. I nodded slowly, playing along with his act, and stepped close under the wide canopy of his heavy raincoat. As we huddled close, I noticed his gaze, instinctively and rapidly, dart toward a nearby adult goods vending machine. before he quickly averted his eyes and draped his arm over my shoulder. I walked beside him like a hollow, mindless corpse. Once we arrived outside his apartment door, Li Mingyuan abruptly pulled out his phone, fired off a quick text, and hastily shoved it back into his pocket. Looks like I forgot my keys. Give me just a second, all right? How ironic. I had clearly felt the heavy metal jingle of his keychain hanging right against his hip. That made it the second time he lied to me tonight. The suffocating dread of suspicion inside me grew exponentially. A moment later, the front door finally swung open. Standing at the threshold was Li Mingyuan's wife, Shen Qing, who also taught chemistry at our high school. She was wearing a silk nightgown, its waist belt tied loosely around her frame, her cheeks flushed with a deep rosy glow. The warm, golden light spilling from the foyer revealed a revealing sight. A bottle of red wine resting on the living room coffee table, scented candles flickering softly, and delicate rose petals scattered across the floor, leaving a lingering, intimate atmosphere, hanging thick in the air. At that very second, a brilliant spark of realization went off in my head. Every single disjointed clue clicked together instantly, tracing out the true, undeniable sequence of events. Teacher Li had clearly planned a highly romantic evening with his wife, only to realize they had completely run out of protection. That was why he braved the torrential storm to buy some, driven by his habitual helpfulness. He simply bent down to clear the debris clogging the drain, and happened to find that discarded fruit-paring knife. But because he ran into me, he felt too embarrassed to buy the items, yet couldn't bear to leave me stranded alone in the storm, which was why he went out of his way to escort me back here. And as for his behavior just now, pretending to forget his keys to sneakily send a text, was simply to give his wife, who was clad in a seductive nightgown, enough time to quickly change into more modest clothes. Every single suspicious action he took tonight had now received a perfectly logical and innocent explanation. Goodness, how did you end up so incredibly drenched? Oh, where are my manners? Quick, take this dry towel and wipe off. Thank you so much, Mrs. Shun. I accepted the towel and began drying my hair, but the lingering doubts in my heart instantly morphed into a far more terrifying wave of confusion. If he truly was still that same benevolent teacher, and if his wife was currently waiting at home for him, with such passionate anticipation, could a warm-hearted man like him genuinely harbor malicious, depraved desires toward a schoolgirl on the street, murdering someone, then disposing of the corpse? Impossible. Shen Qing Sudanli Notisa, Li Mingyuan was still holding the mud-caked knife in his hand. She asked, "Where on earth did you pick up such a filthy knife, dear?" "Oh, I fished it out of the storm drain. It was clogging up the runoff. Then I ran into Gunnancheng, so I forgot to throw it in the dumpster." As Li Mingyuan spoke, he turned to toss the knife into the trash can. But suddenly, a jarring realization hit me, like a physical blow. "Wait, Teacher Li, could you let me examine that knife for a second?" Li Mingyuan looked puzzled, but he immediately flipped the blade around, pointing the sharp tip safely toward himself, while offering the handle directly to me. This instinctive, deeply polite gesture to avoid causing accidental harm once again proved beyond a shadow of a doubt the profound gentleness wired into his very DNA. I took the fruit-paring knife and examined it meticulously under the bright light. My face drained of color instantly. Because it was too dark outside earlier, I had completely missed it. The edge of this blade actually had a tiny, jagged chip on it. This damage was clearly caused by Jiang Yan using the tool to hack at something incredibly hard. But in the forensic autopsy report, there was absolutely no mention of any microscopic chipping on the murder weapon. The resulting lacerations would have looked entirely different. This could only mean one terrifying thing. The real murder weapon was absolutely not this knife. I had been chasing a completely false lead this entire time. I snapped my wrist up to check my watch. It was already 11 p.m. The actual murder weapon was still out there, completely unaccounted for. A wave of pure panic washed over me. I hastily thrust the towel back into Shen Qing's hands. "I'm incredibly sorry, Teacher Li. It is way too late. I have to get home right this instant. I'm going to borrow your raincoat, if that's all right." I forcefully shoved the hilt of the knife back into Li Mingyuan's hand, threw on the oversized raincoat, and bolted straight back into the torrential downpour. I ran like a man possessed, returning to the grim location of the crime. frantically pacing and searching the entire area over and over again. A few scattered pedestrians rushed past me to escape the storm, but absolutely none of them bore the slightest resemblance to a killer waiting to strike. By 23:30 p.m., the streets had emptied out completely, leaving not a single soul in sight. I pulled out my phone once more to check the live feed. My camera monitor showed Bai Wei curled up tightly on the sofa, nodding off heavily as she fought a losing battle against sleep, her head dropping repeatedly, yet she desperately resisted, the crushing waves of exhaustion washing over her. Every few moments, she would still look toward the door, waiting for my return. I clenched my fists in frustration, decisively ripped off the heavy raincoat, and continued to prowl the pitch-black alleyways of the crime scene. But even as the clock ticked past midnight, not a single suspicious figure materialized in the darkness. Deep within my soul, a profound, freezing wave of utter helplessness began to take hold. Could I really have missed my only chance? If I failed to unmask the true killer, how could I ever avenge Bai Wei's tragic death and clear her name from my past life? I tilted my head back, letting the freezing rain pelt against my face, my gaze hardening with absolute resolve. Suddenly, my phone vibrated sharply. I instantly unlocked the screen to view the live security feed. On the display, though Bai Wei was visibly dazed with exhaustion, she conquered her paralyzing fear of being left alone, stumbling toward the front door with an expression of sheer, anxious dread. Hello, hello, hello. The sudden, metallic crackle of my voice through the speaker startled her. She frantically turned her head, locking her eyes onto the lens of the security camera. Gu Nansheng, I got caught up in some urgent business, so I'm running late. I'm heading back right now. If you're exhausted, please go ahead and sleep. I'm just so relieved you're okay. I'm not even sleepy yet. I'll wait up for you. She forced a gentle, reassuring smile directly at the camera lens. The moment I promised her I would be back immediately, she dragged her exhausted body back to the sofa, nestling herself deep within the warm blankets once more, her tense expression finally softening with a sense of relief. Staring down at the completely deserted street, I stood motionless amidst the howling, merciless storm, allowing the icy torrents to drench my skin. This was a seasoned habit I developed over many years, letting the freezing cold water shock my brain back into a state of absolute, razor-sharp clarity. My mind began racing frantically, reconstructing every single encounter in detail from tonight. The convenience store cashier, the paperboy, the 3 street thugs. I forced myself to put every single one of them onto my list of potential suspects. The paperboy, when he was being shook down by those thugs, his backpack was dumped completely upside down. He didn't even have a single cent on him, let alone a lethal weapon. As for the 3 thugs, while they certainly had the malicious intent, the blades they brandished didn't match the victim's wounds at all. I also ruled out the homeless man and the knife he kicked. The weapon that fell into the drain was definitely not the actual murder weapon. After systematically eliminating every impossible option, my mental timeline rewound and locked onto one specific person, someone I had initially dismissed as an absolute impossibility. Jiang Yin. Because of his mother's critical medical emergency, Jiang Yin had bolted straight to the hospital, dropping his knife at the scene in his sheer panic. But what if his mother's condition stabilized quickly? A window of 30 minutes was more than enough time for him to sprint back from the clinic. And what if, on his way back to the alley, he realized his knife was missing and detoured to a nearby shop to purchase a brand new one? But what about the specific fruit-paring knife? The official case files did indeed note that, between 2200 hours and 2300 hours p.m. that night, someone had braved the storm to buy a standard fruit-paring knife, and the timing of his return would have perfectly avoided both me and Teacher Lee during the brief window when we walked to the teacher's apartment. Connecting all these puzzle pieces together, the suspicion surrounding Jiang Yin instantly magnified 100-fold. Verifying this theory was actually incredibly simple. All I had to do right now was knock on Jiang Yin's door. If he was already back home, and indeed possessed a newly purchased blade, the trap of suspicion would close around him completely. Relying on my memory, I navigated the dark corridors toward his apartment, my heart suddenly tightening in my chest. The lights in his living room were actually on. Taking a slow, deep breath, I knocked firmly on the door. The door swung open, revealing a shirtless Jiang Yan, with a damp towel casually draped over his head. Damn, big boss, what the hell are you up to? It's incredibly late. Why aren't you back home yet? And why the hell do you look like a drowned rat? I stepped straight into his apartment, my eyes instantly locking onto a brand new, gleaming, fruit-paring knife sitting on the coffee table. The mysterious individual who braved the storm to buy a knife in the dead of night. Just as the case files described, it truly was him. Teacherly lent me his coat. Did you just get back? Yeah, there was a sudden emergency with my mom's treatment. So I rushed off and forgot to lend you that umbrella. But seriously, wandering around at this hour. What are you doing? Nothing much. I just felt like taking a walk in the rain. You bolted in such a frenzy earlier that you dropped your knife. Is that why you went and bought a brand new one? Ah, damn it. No wonder I couldn't find my old blade. Where did it fall? Teacherly found it and tossed it in the trash. Oh, whatever. That old knife was chipped anyway from hacking at some wooden crates. It was on my way back, so I just grabbed a new one. He chuckled carelessly, but my heart sank like a heavy stone. His return timeline perfectly overlapped with the exact window of the murder, and he had purchased a weapon of the exact same model. At this rate, the suspicion surrounding him could absolutely not be ruled out. I carefully measure my words, deciding to directly test Jiang Yan's true character. We're pretty close friends, wouldn't you say? What do you mean pretty close? We're brothers, man. Is something bothering you? Just spit it out, I've got your back. Looking at his fiercely loyal expression, I stared straight into his eyes. I just don't ever want to see you behind bars one day. Before you do anything reckless, think about the consequences. Your mother literally cannot survive without you there to care for her. Don't do anything that crosses the line of the law. Jiang Yan froze. He completely misconstrued my warning, assuming that I had somehow uncovered his secret scheme at school, his underground operation of selling contraband cigarettes. Instead of getting defensive or angry, he was deeply moved that I had braved a violent storm just to look out for him. Don't worry, brother. Others might not understand the code I live by, but you know me better than anyone. I'd never cross that line. Seeing the absolute sincerity in his eyes, I stood up to take my leave. Little did I know, this accidental, heartfelt warning would make him permanently abandon his underground cigarette trade. As I turned to face the storm once more, he pounded his chest behind me with fierce, brotherly pride, vowing in his heart that I would be his ride-or-die brother for the rest of his days. My mind swirling with conflicting emotions, I bid farewell to Jiang Yan, clutching teacher Li's borrowed raincoat, and quietly returned to the teacher's front door. I set the raincoat down gently on the porch. From inside, muffled, intimate sounds echoed faintly, enough to make anyone blush and their heart race. Deciding not to interrupt their private moment, I chose to walk all the way home under the pouring rain. Slowly, the crushing weight in my chest began to lift. Even if Jiang Yan was destined to be the killer right now, he was still at a stage where he could be guided toward the light. A clean slate before any dark impulses took root. Having crossed paths with so many key players tonight, none of them stood out as a definitive threat. By the time I finally reached my apartment, it was past midnight. The moment the front door clicked open, Bai Wei, who had been dozing off restlessly on the rug, snapped her eyes open, seeing that I had returned. Her face instantly lit up with a radiant, relieved smile as she scrambled to her feet and rushed over. But as she got closer, she realized I was dripping wet from head to toe. You only went out to grab some late-night takeout. How on earth did you get completely drenched like this? The storm was brutal. My umbrella snapped, and the food got blown right out of my hands. So there's nothing to eat. Go take a hot shower right now, before you catch a nasty cold. Staring at her incredibly worried face, a soft smile crept onto my lips. The guest room bed is just a bare wooden frame right now, completely unmade. How about you sleep on the sofa tonight? Or, you could always share the bed with me. The sofa is totally fine. Just kidding. You take the bed. I'll crash on the sofa myself. Let me grab a quick shower first. I don't want to ruin your freshly mopped floor with all this water. Without wasting another second, right there in the living room, I began stripping off my heavy, waterlogged clothes. Hearing the soft rustle of shedding fabric, Bai Wei instinctively glanced up. The sight of my lean, well-defined muscles sent her pulse racing in a wild frenzy. She felt her delicate face instantly flush scarlet, her throat tightening as if choked with cotton, rendering her completely speechless. I'm going to jump in the shower first. Once I'm done, I'll let you know so you can head to the bedroom. Failing to notice her flustered, bewildered state, I gathered my soaked clothes and stepped into the bathroom. Bai Wei nodded like a mindless robot, remaining frozen until the steady hiss of running water echoed from within. Only then did she sink back onto the sofa, limp and completely drained of energy, pressing the backs of her hands against her burning cheeks. What felt like an eternity later, I stepped out with a towel wrapped around my waist. I initially intended to tell her to move to the bedroom, only to find her hugging the blanket like a fragile kitten, curled up in a tight ball on the sofa, fast asleep and completely dead to the world, breathing with an air of absolute peace and security. He quietly glided over, knelt down beside her, and softly gazed at her serene, sleeping face, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. A surreal, dreamlike sensation washed over me as I reached out to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. A stray drop of water clinging to my arm slid down, landing right on her slightly parted lips. She unconsciously parted her lips to lick it away, startling me into instantly snatching my hand back. Suddenly, a sharp crack of thunder rattled the window pane. Bai Wei shifted restlessly, causing her blanket to slip halfway off. I instinctively reached out to catch it, but my fingers accidentally brushed against her warm, bare ankle. I could instantly feel her once steady, peaceful breathing suddenly stutter and hitch, her eyelashes fluttering in a frantic panic, as her body temperature rapidly began to rise. She was wide awake, yet she refused to open her eyes. Deciding not to call her bluff, I gently scooped her up, blanket and all, and carried her with firm, steady steps toward the bedroom. The girl in my arms grew increasingly rigid with nervous tension. I carefully laid her down on the soft mattress, pulled away the tangled throw, and covered her with my warm comforter. Then, I leaned down close, whispering right next to her ear. The warmth of my breath made her instinctively shrink back, shrugging her shoulders. I let out a soft chuckle, turned on my heel, and quietly walked out. As the bedroom door clicked shut, Bai Wei snapped her eyes wide open in the darkness. In truth, during those few short, breathless steps from the living room, her mind had gone completely, utterly blank. She had been wound up with a paralyzing level of tension, never expecting that all she would receive was a gentle, whispering wish of sweet dreams. She clutched the edge of the blanket, pulling it right up to her nose. It was still softly infused with the clean, subtle scent of my body wash. For the first time in her entire life, she didn't feel the need to curl up like a defensive ball. Her body relaxed completely into the mattress, and wrapped in that soothing warmth, she drifted into a deep, peaceful slumber. At the crack of dawn the following morning, the relentless storm that had ravaged the night finally died down. Fully rested, Bai Wei woke up early, slipping into her clothes which had been freshly dried the night before, eager to make good on her promise of doing chores. To offset her free lodging, she showed immense initiative, meticulously tidying up the bedroom until it was spotless. But the moment she quietly stepped out into the living room, she froze dead in her tracks. I had been so utterly exhausted last night that I simply wrapped a towel around my waist, threw a thin blanket over myself, and crashed hard on the couch. Right now, my back was turned toward her, but the towel that was supposed to be securely wrapped around me had somehow slipped entirely off, pooling onto the floor. Bai Wei's delicate face flushed a raging, crimson red in an instant, desperately trying to distract her racing mind. She skillfully scavenged ingredients from the fridge, whipping up a fresh batch of sandwiches and warm milk. Yet try as she might, she couldn't stop her brain from replaying that incredibly scandalous, heart-pounding view. Just as Bai Wei set the breakfast down, I began to stir on the sofa, slowly waking up. In my hazy, half-awake state, I instinctively reached out toward the head of the bed for my holster, only to feel the cold, hard glass of the coffee table instead. I abruptly pushed myself up with my left arm, sitting straight up, the old, aching scar on my left shoulder, a souvenir from a brutal suspect pursuit in my past life, didn't flare up with even a single hint of pain. Massaging my temples, I frowned and pulled the towel back around my waist, feeling a sudden, jarring disconnect between my physical body and my memories. All those brutal scars from my past battles had vanished completely, replaced by a young, unblemished, and pristine physique. In that moment, a wave of cold clarity washed over me. I really, truly had leaped 15 years back into the past. I abruptly snapped my head toward the open bedroom doorway, my heart skipping a frantic beat. But seeing her delicate figure bustling around. In the kitchen, I collapsed back onto the sofa with a heavy, ragged sigh, letting out a long-overdue breath of relief. Thank God, it wasn't just a cruel, fleeting dream. She had actually survived that horrific, rain-slick night. In my previous life, as a weary homicide detective, I carried a crushing mountain of guilt and relentless exhaustion, never having the chance to enjoy even a single day of what a normal youth should be. But now, she was standing right there in front of me, and my lost youth had been handed back to me. This time, I was going to live this second chance to the absolute fullest. Gu Nansheng, rise and shine, time for breakfast. I whipped up some food for us. I really hope it's to your liking. Bai Wei peeked her head out from the dining room, her voice soft and sweet. I sat up, inhaling deeply as the delicious aroma wafted through the air, the rich, mouth-watering scent of toasted wheat and warm milk. I'm on my way, I called out, heading straight to the dining table. Bai Wei was sitting there quietly, waiting for me to join her. You don't have to wait up for me next time, just dig in. Oh, it's no trouble at all. Besides, I need to wait for you to finish so I can wash the dishes anyway. Give it a taste and let me know how it is. If anything is off, just tell me, and I'll make sure to adjust it next time. Honestly, you could easily open a shop on the street behind campus. When that day comes, I'll handle the register while you play head chef. I used to be pretty disciplined when I lived alone, but if I keep living with you like this, I'm seriously terrified you're going to turn me into a lazy couch potato. Ha! Bai Wei cupped her face with both hands, her smile blooming even brighter. I took a big bite of the egg sandwich. The warm, rich cheese melted over my tongue, bursting with incredible, comforting flavor. I pulled a tissue from a box and gently dabbed away a tiny smudge of grease on the tip of her nose. The tips of Bai Wei's ears instantly flushed a deep pink. Blushing furiously, she looked down and began stirring her milk. When we finished, I reached out to clear the table, only for my fingers to brush against her hand as she reached for the same plate. Her touch was unbelievably soft, yet slightly cold to the touch. Bai Wei stubbornly insisted on monopolizing all the household chores. Her movements, lightning fast as she scrubbed the kitchen until it was completely spotless. The moment she stepped out of the kitchen, she immediately began scanning the room, hunting for her next task. I gently took her small, delicate hand in mine and forced her to sit down on the sofa. You look completely drained of energy right now. No more chores for the next 2 days. I'm the landlord here, so you follow my rules and get some proper rest. Otherwise, I might just have to kick you out. Bai Wei was completely stunned by my blunt declaration, nodding her head in quiet submission. In a little bit, we're going out. I'll take you to get some brand new clothes. I can just go back to my house to grab my old things. At the mention of going home, her entire demeanor instantly shifted, clouding with a tense, unnatural resistance. There's no need for that. We'll buy you brand new stuff. If you can't afford it, I'll just add it to your tab with interest. You'll just have to work as my personal housekeeper until the debt is cleared. And if you can't pay it off, I guess I'll never let you leave. Bai Wei easily caught the underlying desire to keep her close hidden within my playful threats. A warm, comforting wave washed over her heart, and a soft, peaceful smile finally graced her lips as she quietly agreed. Where do you usually go to shop for clothes? I normally go to the thrift store at the corner of the back street. For just 50 yuan, I can easily put together a full outfit. But I always sanitize everything thoroughly. I wash them with soap, boil them 3 times, and make sure they dry completely in the hot sun. Her soft voice grew slightly rushed and defensive, terrified that I would look down on her because of it. I actually know of a great spot. The clothes there are exceptional. As I suddenly took her hand, Bai Wei stumbled slightly, taking a half step forward, her forehead gently bumping against my shoulder blade. She made no effort to pull away, letting me guide her down the street. We came to a halt in front of a glass display window at the corner of the street. From inside, the rustic wooden door of a shop, the gentle chime of a copper bell, and the soft hum of a sewing machine blended together harmoniously. Staring at the expensive garments displayed behind the glass, Bai Wei instinctively grew self-conscious, nervously clutching the hem of her worn jacket. This place looks incredibly expensive. The shop owner is actually an old classmate of my mother's. She mostly caters to university students. It's not expensive at all, so just trust me and let's go inside. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior of the cozy boutique was filled with the clean, comforting scent of freshly ironed cotton. Aunt Xue, looking up from behind the counter, let her gaze linger on our tightly intertwined hands, a warm, knowing smile, crinkling the corners of her eyes. My, what an absolutely gorgeous young lady. Nansheng, did you bring your girlfriend here to do some shopping? Bai Wei's ears flushed bright crimson in an instant. Sensing her sudden panic and awkwardness, I gently released my grip. Aunt Xue, could you help her pick out a few outfits for the changing season? She'll also need some undergarments, preferably high quality, pure cotton. Aunt Xue chuckled warmly and ushered Bai Wei behind the fitting room curtain, which only covered from the neck down. Bai Wei couldn't shake the persistent feeling that she was completely exposed to my line of sight, timidly shrinking herself deeper behind the clothing racks. I stepped back toward the display window, sitting down to casually flip through a fashion catalog. Yet the hushed whispers from behind the curtain drifted directly and clearly to her ears. That lace set is stunning. Trust me on this. A woman must know how to pamper herself when it comes to what you wear underneath. As long as you love how it feels, that's all that matters. Though this piece will definitely drive that boy Nansheng absolutely wild. Think about it. You'll love how it looks, and he'll love looking at it. Isn't that a perfect win-win for both of you? Bai Wei desperately wanted to clarify our living arrangement, but the words caught in her throat and refused to come out. Ultimately, she could only blush furiously and accept the delicate underwear selections. As Aunt Xue handed several outfits behind the curtain, the soft rustling of fabric echoed from within, causing a light sweat to break out on the back of my neck. I couldn't stop my mind from vividly imagining how she would look in them. Suddenly, the curtain slid back with a sharp ring. Does it look weird? Bai Wei asked, self-consciously holding the hem of her skirt as she spun halfway. The morning sunlight filtered through the semi-translucent, honey-colored cotton fabric, and as the hem swayed, it traced a breathtaking curve as delicate as morning dew. My throat tightened, my Adam's apple bobbing. I abruptly stood up, leaning in to gently smooth down her collar. You missed a spot. The second button is misaligned. My fingertips accidentally grazed her soft, warm collarbone. I instantly yanked my hand back as if shocked by electricity, hurriedly grabbing a sun hat and placing on her head. To mask my rising embarrassment. Well, looks like you two are thoroughly pleased, huh? Why don't you give this next one a try? The curtain swept open once again. The semi-translucent, lightweight linen fabric beautifully silhouetted her delicate curves under the morning sun. For a moment, I couldn't tear my eyes away. Aunt Xue's eye for fashion was truly impeccable. Every single outfit she brought out fit her absolutely perfectly. Seeing that she was getting completely carried away with styling, I quickly spoke up to put an end to the shopping spree. All right, Aunt Xue, please stop styling her. My credit card is seriously about to cry. Oh, what are you whining about? Just put on your mom's tab. When it comes to spoiling her future daughter-in-law, she'll be more than thrilled to pay for it. Honestly, I thought you two had already sealed the deal ages ago. I let out a strained, helpless laugh, begging her to keep things down. Aunt Xue teased us a bit more before giving us a massive 90% discount. As we checked out, she packed the undergarments separately, leaned in close, and whispered in my ear, "Your little girlfriend's figure. Aunt Xue personally checked it for you. It's absolutely stunning." I choked on my own spit, blushing furiously as I handed over my card. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Bai Wei, standing on her tiptoes, staring wistfully at a lace nightgown displayed by the window, bathed in the morning light. She looked so incredibly vibrant and beautiful. But in a split second, the horrific image of her lifeless, cold body from my past life flashed violently in my mind once again. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white, swearing a silent vow right then and there. In this lifetime, as long as I draw breath, I will protect her and keep this beautiful sight safe at all costs. With her wardrobe finally sorted, all that was left was to pick out some bedding. I walked ahead, carrying the heavy shopping bags, while Bai Wei trailed slightly behind me, stealing quiet, lingering glances at my back. The mint green lace hem of the nightgown in the bag fluttered gently in the breeze. The home goods section is on the 4th floor. Just pick out whatever you like best. After all, you're the one who'll be sleeping on it. In this very moment, we looked exactly like a young, sweet couple out on a shopping date, bearing a blend of sweet nervousness and quiet excitement. She followed me into the bedding boutique, where the warm golden lights bathed everything in a soft, cozy glow. As I wheeled the shopping cart right alongside her, watching her lean over to inspect the different displays, we felt exactly like newlyweds picking out essentials for their first home together. Isn't this one a bit too expensive? Nonsense. If you like it, just give it a try first. I grabbed a luxurious silk comforter and gently piled it into her arms. She only smiled, saying nothing in return. But the moment I squatted down to compare some mattress toppers on a lower shelf, she quietly slipped away to return that premium 4-figure silk comforter right back to its display. Instead, she came back hugging a much cheaper, light blue cotton blanket. This one actually feels really nice to the touch. Nice. The material is way too thin. Realizing she was simply letting the price tag hold her back, I stood up and gave her forehead a playful, gentle flick. High-quality bedding is an investment in a good night's sleep. Besides, even after you move out of the guest room, we can always wash it and keep it ready for future guests. Splurging on something nice is absolutely worth it. My casual use of "we" in the mention of her leaving the guest room sparked a completely different interpretation in her mind. She froze for a brief moment, her eyes widening slightly. Come over here and feel the support on this mattress. Before she could even register what was happening, I gently pulled her down onto the plush, fluffy display bed, simultaneously sliding a soft memory foam pillow right under her head. My hand, resting against her through the thick layers of fabric, gently supported the curve of her waist. Sunk deep into the cloud-like bedding, her cheeks flushed a lovely shade of pink, feeling as though the very air around us had suddenly been saturated with a sweet, syrupy warmth. Once we finally finished checking out, she stared quietly at the sleek, pale silver comforter sitting in our cart and offered a soft whisper of gratitude. "Thank you so much, Gunanshan." Hearing this, I abruptly stopped in my tracks. Caught off guard, she bumped right in my back. "You could drop the thank you from now on. Actions speak much louder than words. If you really want to pay me back, then no matter what happens, you must make sure you stay safe and unharmed." Though she looked a bit puzzled by the intensity of my words, she still gave me a sweet, obedient nod. "Let's go. Let's head home." After settling the bill and leaving our address for delivery, I carried the shopping bags and guided her back home. As we passed by a small dessert stall at the corner, the rich, sweet aroma of osmanthus fermented rice wine filled the air. I bought a steaming hot portion of rice cakes, blew on it gently to cool it down, and held it to her lips. She took a small bite, leaving a tiny speck of osmanthus flour on her lip. I casually reached out and wiped it away with my thumb. "Is it good?" "It's incredibly sweet and fragrant. Next time, I'll take you to the night market street. There are way more delicious snacks over there." Hearing my casual promise, she stared at my back with a soft, dazed look in her eyes. What I didn't realize was that, deep down, she had always cherished a childhood memory, a simple promise we made years ago at the park. Once we finished buying her personal toiletries and returned home, the brand new bedding had already been delivered. I knelt down on the living room floor to stuff the comforter into its cover, while Baiwei stood by, hugging her new pillow tight. "Let me do that. No, I've got this. I'm worried you'll somehow sew yourself inside the blanket." I shook out the fresh bedsheet and playfully draped it over her head like a wedding veil. "From this moment on, this entire bed and this entire room belongs to you. You can stay here for as long as you want." Those simple, casual words, in an instant, struck a deep, resonant chord in the absolute depths of her heart. She abruptly spun around, turning her back to me. My sharp instincts immediately picked up on the sudden, heavy tension that filled the quiet room. Watching her shoulders tremble unnaturally, I realized she was crying. Perhaps this was the very first time in her life she had ever experienced the warm, comforting embrace of having a home. Desperate to break the heavy silence, I playfully teased her. "Hey, don't get too emotional just yet. I'm still charging you rent, you know? You can stay, but you'd better figure out how you're going to pay off your debt." Hearing my playful banter, Baiwei wiped her eyes, and turned around to face me. Her eyes were still slightly red and puffy, yet her face bloomed with the most radiant, beautiful smile. By noon, I had finally helped Bai Wei settle everything into her room. Just as I collapsed onto the sofa, ready to let out a long sigh of relief, the doorbell suddenly rang with a loud, jarring buzz. Bai Wei instinctively took a sharp, terrified step backward, having personally witnessed the horrific tragedy of my past life. My nerve had been stretched to their absolute breaking point, and I absolutely dared not lower my guard for even a split second, terrified that the person standing right outside the door might be that same vicious predator lurking in the shadows. I sprang into action, firmly shielding her behind my back. "Stay back. Let me check it out." Noticing my intense, fiercely protective stance, Bai Wei was slightly taken aback, yet a sweet, warm emotion welled up in her eyes. Bracing myself as if facing a deadly enemy, I pressed my eye against the peephole, only to discover that the person standing outside was Jiang Yan, the primary suspect I had been tracking. During this exact period in my previous life, Jiang Yan had never visited my apartment in the original timeline. The timeline has definitely shifted. This sudden, unannounced visit caused my internal alarms to blare instantly. I forced my racing heartbeat to slow down and swung the door open. "Jiang Yan, what on earth are you doing here? Can't a guy drop by to see his friend without a reason? You got absolutely drenched in that brutal storm last night, and I was worried you'd catch a nasty cold. So I begged my mom to teach me how to brew this herbal remedy, and I brought some over for you." Staring at the insulated thermos clutched in his hands, a sudden wave of understanding washed over me. It turned out that my desperate attempt to persuade him in the pouring rain last night had deeply touched him, triggering this unexpected butterfly effect. Looking at the young man standing before me, his eyes filled with genuine care and fierce loyalty for brother, I was momentarily lost for words. To be fair, my head was starting to feel a bit heavy and dazed. In that case, make sure to drink a couple of bowls while it's piping hot. Jiang Yan was about to step inside, when his gaze suddenly fell upon Bai Wei, who was still shielded. Behind my back, he froze on the spot, his eyes darting back and forth between the two of us in rapid succession. "Wait, Bai Wei, you two know each other?" I get it now. Greetings, sister-in-law. Looks like my timing today is absolutely terrible. This ginger, red date, and brown sugar tea needs to be drank hot. It's actually incredibly nourishing for you too, sister-in-law. Anyway, I need to head back to the hospital to take care of my mother, so I won't play third wheel any longer. See ya." Jiang Yan spun on his heel and bolted down the hall, staring at his retreating figure, so bursting with vibrant energy and pure, naive warmth. My heart tangled into a complicated knot of conflicting emotions. It was genuinely hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that someone so incredibly loyal and fiercely protective of his friends could ever be that merciless, cold-blooded killer. In fact, I desperately, intensely hoped that I would soon uncover a completely different suspect, clearing his name and purging every shred of doubt from my mind. Bai Wei stared down the corridor, where Jiang Yan had just vanished. Everyone at school calls him a terrifying, legendary gang leader. But he doesn't seem like that kind of person at all, does he? You can never judge a book by its cover. He's got his own heavy burdens and a story of his own. A lot of things in this world are never as simple as they appear on the surface. I unscrewed the lid of the thermos, and a potent, fragrant steam of ginger and red dates rushed into my senses. I poured it out into 2 bowls, handing one to her and telling her to drink it while it was boiling hot. "You got caught in that nasty downpour last night, too. And I've noticed your complexion has been a bit pale lately, so drink up. It'll do your body some good." As the spicy, sweet and sour herbal broth slid down her throat, a comforting wave of heat instantly radiated to her very fingertips. I've only ever heard terrible, vicious rumors about him before. I had no idea he was actually such a decent person. People are often just driven to extremes by life. He was never meant to end up walking down this dark path. Hearing the phrase, driven to extremes by life, Bai Wei's expression visibly darkened, a shadow casting over her face. Those few simple words had struck a painful, deeply personal chord with her own tragic struggles. As for the dark secrets of Bai Wei's family life, I only possessed a fragmented, basic understanding. Back in my previous life, during the investigation of her tragic murder, I had tracking down and questioned her parents. But those dead-end interviews yielded absolutely nothing. Her parents had divorced, and both had quickly started new families. She had always been dragged along to live with her mother. This harsh reality made me absolutely certain of one thing. On that fateful, storm-ravaged night in my past life, the breaking point that forced Byway to desperately seek me out was undeniably, inextricably linked to the toxic environment of her dysfunctional family. In my past life, I had picked up whispers from the neighbors that on the night, Byway fled blindly into the pouring rain. She had engaged in a violent, desperate clash with her stepfather, allegedly stabbing and wounding him in self-defense. Yet, when I pressed them for details, they vehemently denied everything, claiming the stepfather had merely slipped on the wet floor. The floor was slippery, and he had accidentally crashed into her mother, who just so happened to be holding a sharp apple-peeling knife. They also claimed the stepfather had discovered a photo of a high school boy saved on her phone, and that his harsh scolding had triggered the explosive argument. Shortly after Byway fled the house, they immediately left for the hospital. Surveillance cameras confirmed their exact arrival time at the clinic, completely clearing them of any suspicion in her murder. However, upon learning of Byway's tragic death, the stepfather remained completely indifferent, displaying zero emotion. Her mother fainted on the spot and eventually lost her mind entirely, spiraling into madness. What tore at my heart even more viciously was that the subsequent investigation revealed Byway had actually gone to her father's house first after leaving her mother's place. But the security footage showed her leaving shortly after. She was walking with her head hanging low, looking infinitely more devastated than when she had first arrived. On that storm-ravaged, freezing night, she was brutally rejected, one after another, by her only biological families, before finally wandering her way to my doorstep. I couldn't bear to imagine the sheer, suffocating despair clawing at her soul when she finally knocked on my door. Every single time those memories resurfaced, a tidal wave of crippling regret would wash over me, threatening to drown me alive. Thank God the heavens have granted me a second chance to rewrite history. I swear, under absolutely no circumstances, will I ever let go of her hand again. Carrying a glass of warm milk, I walked over to the sofa. Byway was curled up in the corner, absorbed in a book, the soft, golden glow highlighting her slender, fragile frame. I caught her unconsciously rubbing the inner side of her left wrist, briefly exposing a faint, crescent-shaped pink scar. Drink up. I added a spoonful of honey for you. I gently pressed the warm glass into her hands. She instinctively opened her mouth to thank me. But remember my warning from earlier? She quickly swallowed her words with a soft smile. Amidst the soothing, sweet aroma of the warm milk, I noticed she was flipping through one of my books, which I had carelessly left on the shelf. What's this? Planning to become a professional fortune teller? Exactly. Once I master this, I'll give you a reading first, she teased with a playful, rare grin, as the comfortable banter flowed between us. Suddenly, the screech of car tires, braking violently, echoed from outside the window. Byway flinched, nearly spilling the warm milk everywhere. I quickly reached out, steadying her trembling hands, and only after confirming everything was clear outside did I sit back down beside her, gently wrapping my fingers around her hand. Don't worry, remember you're still deeply in my debt, and until you've fully paid me back, absolutely no one can drag you away from here. Though her heart was already racing from the sudden scare, hearing my protective words sent her pulse into overdrive. Once I master this book, I'll see if our horoscopes actually align. I'm just worried you'll find out you're totally incompatible with your creditor. Am I playful teasing? Byway's delicate face instantly flushed a deep, beautiful crimson. Truth be told, she had already secretly checked their compatibility charts, and to her utter amazement, they were a perfect match. So, which university are you planning to apply to? Well, I have a rough idea, but I haven't made a final decision yet. My plan is actually quite simple. Whichever school you choose, I'm tagging along right beside you. After all, you owe me a massive fortune if I don't keep a close eye on you at all times. How do I know you won't just run away and leave me empty-handed? Byway slowly stirred her milk, drawing lazy circles with her spoon, and as she locked eyes with my smiling gaze, a sweet, dizzying warmth flooded her chest. I want to get into Jean University, specifically majoring in psychology at the Capital Medical University campus. Those two elite schools were incredibly hard to get into. What made you suddenly want to study psychology? In an instant, the memory of her mother's tragic madness flashed through my mind. Could it be that her mother had been suffering from mental illness all along? Bai Wei's lips parted slightly, but in the end, she chose to remain silent. Well, that's actually a fantastic field. At the very least, it'll help build up your own mental resilience. I'll do my absolute best. Let me tutor you so we can study together. She looked up at me, completely caught off guard. My current grades in class are barely scraping average, while you're consistently ranked at the very top. What? Are you doubting my teaching skills? Hey, you're lying right now. Every single time you tell a lie, you completely avoid looking people in the eye, and your voice starts to waver. Little did I know, when she heard my voice falter, she took it as proof that I had been keeping a close eye on her all along. The sweet, fluttering warmth in her heart instantly surpassed the sugary taste of the honeyed milk. Determined to prove my academic prowess, I yanked out a stack of university mock exams and began writing furiously, tearing through page after page, with absolute speed and flawless accuracy. To be fair, in my past life, in order to get into the prestigious National Police University to track down her killer, I had studied like an absolute madman. These complex equations and formulas were practically etched into my very soul, staring at my newly revealed genius-level intellect. Bai Wei's eyes practically sparkled with pure, unfiltered admiration. At this rate, won't I end up owing you a massive fortune in tutoring fees too? What on earth am I going to do when I can't pay you back? Well, in that case, you'll just have to sign an indentured servitude contract. I grabbed a pen and paper and slid them over to her. It was supposed to be nothing more than a playful joke, but to my absolute surprise, she eagerly accepted them, bowing her head to write with deadpan seriousness. Curious, I leaned in to see what kind of joke she was playing, only to find that Bai Wei had boldly pinned the words servitude contract at the top, along with the line signee. Bai Wei, leaving a massive blank space right in the middle. She flashed a sly smile as she slid the paper back to me. I'll let you, my esteemed creditor, fill in whatever conditions you want. Doesn't that mean I can make you do absolutely anything I want? So, how would you like me to serve you, master creditor? She gave me a playful, mischievous wink. I suddenly leaned in, bringing my lips right next to her ear. My warm breath brushed against her skin, sending a shiver of goosebumps down her neck. I don't need your service, but I do have one absolute command. Starting tonight, Bai Wei nervously swallowed hard. By 10 p.m., you must be in bed asleep. And you are absolutely not allowed to wake up before 7 a.m. Breakfast tomorrow is on me. She blinked at me in sheer disbelief, before her chest swelled with warmth and her face lit up with a brilliant smile. As you wish, master creditor. As the darkness of night finally blanketed the city, under my strict, non-negotiable orders, Bai Wei obediently tucked herself into bed. I left a glass of warm milk on her nightstand. Feel free to lock your door, I whispered before stepping out and closing the door behind me. As for her, she stared quietly at the bedroom doorknob, and in the end, decided to leave it unlocked. Back in my own room, I let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. To numb the crushing guilt that had consumed me, I used to throw myself like a madman into solving cases, even rejecting the comfortable desk job my mentor had arranged, just to keep myself occupied, terrified that a single idle moment would drag my thoughts back to her. But now, back to when I was 15, she had been saved. I was finally, truly free from that haunting past. After comforting my anxious mind, I drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. In my dream, I was swept back to a corner of the park from our childhood. A tiny, delicate doll-like girl was sobbing all by herself. Why are you crying so hard when you're already a big girl? I'm not crying. Did those kids bully you? Tell me, and I'll make them apologize. The little girl hastily grabbed the boy's sleeve, sniffles interrupting her voice as she said it wasn't anyone else's fault. Young Gunan. Chung pulled out a pristine handkerchief his mother had packed for him, and gently wiped away her streaming tears. Why are you staring at me like that? Is there something on my face? The boy innocently peered at his own reflection in a puddle, making the tearful little girl burst into sudden, joyful laughter. Ha ha ha. My name is Gu Nanchung. I play here all the time. Whenever you're sad, just come here and find me. Hearing his mother call out from a distance, the boy waved goodbye and ran off into the sunlight. Ring, ring. The blaring alarm clock shattered the silence. I gasped, my eyes flying open in the morning light, muttering to myself, why on earth did I suddenly dream of our childhood? At that exact moment, Baiwei was also lost in the very same dream of that park. One of my parents is about to leave me forever. Don't cry over that. I thought it was something actually serious. Both of my parents have already left me, and you don't see me crying about it. Young Baiwei stared at him in utter amazement, marveling at how incredibly strong this boy was. She instinctively reached out to hug him, seek comfort, and muttered, "But what will you do if your parents are gone?" "I'll just live with my grandparents, of course. The grown-ups say they'll come back once their work is done. But they said once they leave, they'll start new families. They won't want me anymore. I'm so scared." The boy wiped her tears once more and firmly grasped her small hand. "Then you could just come to my house. It's super big. I heard my parents say they've always wanted a daughter anyway. We can officially become a real family, you and I." That incredibly naive, innocent childhood promise caused little Baiwei's tears to pour down like a river. For the first time, she realized there was actually a safe haven waiting for her in this cruel world. Yet from that day on, she never returned to that park. She only left behind a heartfelt note overflowing with gratitude, tucked carefully beneath their secret meeting spot. As the dream faded, Baiwei watched his retreating figure vanish, unaware that fresh tears had already soaked her eyelashes. I knocked gently on her door to wake her up. On the dining table, I serve a special, nurturing congee, infused with red dates, red beans, barley, and lily bulbs to revitalize her. Watching her cautiously blow on the hot porridge like a fragile little kitten, I couldn't help but stare blankly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "I just realized. You look strikingly similar to someone. A little girl I met briefly during my childhood. We only played together for barely 2 weeks before she suddenly moved away. You remind me so much of her." Did she really leave without saying goodbye? As Baiwei pressed for answers, I drifted back into my memories. No, there was no proper goodbye at all. I only discovered she was gone when I found a tiny, torn scrap of paper left behind. The rain had completely ruined it, leaving only a fragmented half. I locked eyes with Baiwei, noticing that her expressions and the girl's demeanor were practically identical. I asked her if she had ever met a young boy in that neighborhood park when she was little. She merely flashed a teasing, playful smile and told me to guess. Baiwei was visibly beaming with joy. She finally understood that the only reason I hadn't recognized her name before was because her note had been torn. Knowing that I had genuinely kept her in my memories all this time, she uncharacteristically played hard to get and refused to give me a straight answer. "Fine, then I guess you weren't her. Because you are infinitely more beautiful than that little girl." Seeing her delicate face instantly flush a deep crimson, I let out a triumphant, satisfied chuckle. Once we finished breakfast, I planned to take her out to buy a brand new smartphone. After all, I couldn't expect to keep her by my side 24/7. At the exact same time, I was mentally rehearsing how to ask my mother, who lived far away, for a financial favor. After splurging on designer clothes and premium bedding last night, my credit card was undoubtedly pushed to its absolute limit. I desperately needed to secure some funds. I had only texted her asking to borrow $5,000, but to my absolute shock, she wired me $50,000 right away. Staring at my mom's text saying, "If you need more, just let me know and make sure you treat her right," I could only let out a dry, helpless chuckle. It seems Susie had already leaked the news about me taking a girl underwear shopping. Straight to my mother, armed with this massive war chest, I instantly felt a surge of profound confidence. "Since we have plenty of free time today, is there anywhere in particular you'd like to go?" "Well, I'd love to take a stroll through the Old Town Park." The Old Town Park. Wait, wasn't that the exact spot where that little girl and I had met all those years ago? Connecting her sudden request with her earlier reactions. Her parents' bitter divorce, the fractured families they rebuilt, and that distinct, telling habit of hers, how she couldn't look people in the eye when she lied, and how her voice would cut off in nervous hesitation. Every single piece of the puzzle fell flawlessly into place. She was indeed that very same girl. My heart suddenly swelled with a powerful, overwhelming emotion. In my previous life, with her tragic death, my entire world had plummeted into absolute darkness. leaving me with zero mental space to ever look back at my childhood. But now, thinking back with absolute clarity, she was indeed the precious little girl from my past. The open field over by the park is perfect for flying kites. Let's grab a kite on the way. And after we fly it, we can grab some delicious street food. I'd love to. I've actually never flown a kite before. Seeing her face light up with childish, pure excitement at the mere mention of flying a kite, my heart ached with profound sorrow and tenderness. The simple, mundane joys that ordinary people took for granted were rare, precious luxuries to her. I swore a silent, solemn oath to myself. No matter how much color her life had lost, I would help her reclaim every single shade, piece by piece. First, let's head out and get you a proper smartphone. You don't have one on you, and if something happens, how is a creditor like me supposed to track you down? Amused by my ridiculously transparent excuse, she let out a soft laugh and nodded in agreement, pushing open the glass doors of the mobile shop. An enthusiastic sales representative eagerly pulled off a display cover and began showing us the latest models. A sleek, cherry blossom pink phone designed specifically for couples. At the mention of that particular word, Bai Wei flushed, her fingers nervously gathering the hem of her light blue skirt. I casually pointed to the trendy pink device, priced at 4,888 renminbi. Noticing her eyes widen and lock onto the steep price tag, I reached over and gently blocked her view. Don't look at things you shouldn't be worrying about. The creditor makes the decisions here. The sales representative fetched the display model and eagerly showed us how to use the aesthetic selfie filters. As a virtual snowdrift filter brushed across the screen, framing my profile, Bai Wei flusteredly tapped the shutter button, capturing nothing but a blurry shot of my jacket hem. Selfies only look good when you capture them from this distance. I leaned in close, placing my hand firmly over hers. The warmth from my palm radiated through the back of her hand, sending a sweet jolt straight to her heart. With my cheek practically brushing against her hair, I pressed the shutter. The screen flashed brightly, capturing her looking up slightly. My profile nestled right against her soft tresses. The glass window behind us reflected our overlapping silhouettes, making us look exactly like a pair of young lovers stealing a secret photo together. After the purchase was finalized, the staff offered a complimentary engraving of the couple's initials. Let's go with these letters then, I suggested. Bai Wei stared at the characters, a puzzled look on her face. The first 3 letters were clearly my initials. But what did the final 2 letters stand for? Even as we stepped out of the store, she was still utterly lost in thought, trying to crack the code, nearly tripping over the curb in the process. I swiftly caught her, pulling her securely against my chest. The faint, sweet fragrance of her hair drifted past my nose. Watch where you're going, you little klutz. Come on, just tell me already. Otherwise, it's going to drive me crazy all day. She gave my sleeve a rare, incredibly cute tug. All right, fine. I surrender, since I'm your primary creditor. MC obviously stands for my debtor in my personal shorthand. Though, of course, it can be interpreted in other ways too. Bai Wei gasped softly as the realization hit her. An entirely different, heart-fluttering translation flashing in her mind. Her pulse suddenly went into overdrive, and her lovely, fair face flushed a brilliant crimson once again. Watching Bai Wei flush a bright, bashful crimson, I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Those 2 delicate letters MC. She was undoubtedly translating them as my choice or my companion. I chose not to lay that hidden meaning completely bare. This delicate mix of teenage self-doubt and sweet anticipation made her look absolutely breathtaking in this very moment. The bus rumbled and swayed as it headed toward the Old Town District, the very place where our childhood memories beautifully overlapped. I slipped off one of my earbuds and gently tucked it into her ear. Have you ever heard this track before? It was Don't Cry by Zhang Jihua, my absolute favorite artist. Actually, I'm quite fond of this song too. In that instant, a flood of memories rushed back to overwhelm my mind. In my previous life, I had listened to this melody countless times in the dead of night, grieving for her after she met her tragic, untimely end. The lyrics echoed with haunting beauty. Tonight, I'm like a night blooming Sirius, withering away, just as my most beautiful moment begins to unfold. It felt painfully, like an eerie prophecy written for her tragic fate. Through the earbud, the melancholic, ethereal cover version, sung by Lei Ting played, and as Bai Wei listened, tears silently began to stream down her face. I never knew that in my past life, whenever she stood on that rooftop, wanting to end it all, it was the lingering memory of that little boy from the park that had given her the strength to survive until now. These tears she shed today were a final, quiet farewell to the suffocating darkness of her past. As I sat there, utterly lost in a wave of sorrow, a soft, warm hand gently brushed across my cheek. Bai Wei's eyes brimmed with a deep, heart-wrenching tenderness. Just like she did when we were kids, she suddenly pulled me into a gentle, protective embrace, the soothing warmth radiating from her, perfectly merged with the memory of the little girl who had once comforted me in that very park. I didn't pull away, allowing time to stand completely still in this brief sanctuary. The morning sunlight filtered through the bus window, chasing away the heavy fog that had clouded my heart for so long. Stepping off the bus, the breeze in the old town carried the rich, nostalgic scent of camphor leaves. The bustling breakfast stalls lining the streets, the vintage bicycle bells chiming. Everything remained beautifully unchanged. We walked side by side, as if we had stepped straight back into our golden childhood days, stepping into an alley lined with colorful kites. Bai Wei followed closely behind me, her eyes wide with childlike curiosity. We eventually paused in front of a rustic kite stall, her gaze instantly locked onto a beautiful peach-pink butterfly kite. Would you sweet young couple like to grab one each? This blue one here makes a perfect matching pair with it. And how am I supposed to hold her hand if we're busy flying two separate kites? My playful comeback left the elderly shopkeeper utterly speechless, while Bai Wei giggled softly, hiding her face. Her initial nervousness completely melted away as the warm spring breeze brushed against our faces. I dashed ahead with the kite to demonstrate how to launch it. Now start running faster. Under my enthusiastic guidance, the butterfly kite caught a strong updraft and soared into the sky. Bai Wei looked up at the clouds, her eyes sparkling with a brilliant, unprecedented joy. Want to give it a try? I asked, handing her the string reel. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind pulled hard on the line, making her stumble slightly. I instinctively stepped in, wrapping my arms around her from behind, my warm palms pressed gently over the backs of her hands and fingers. In that brief, intimate touch, the clean, delicate scent of wild jasmine from her hair drifted over to me. Gu Nansheng, remember when we were kids and you said clouds looked like cotton candy? You always said you wanted to taste them to see how sweet they were. But I think I found something even better. It's you. Because your smile is just like cotton candy, so incredibly soft and sweet. But right as we were lost in our sweet, private world, I suddenly spotted a highly familiar figure squatting nearby. Jiang Yin? What on earth are you doing here? Jiang Yin flinched, looking completely caught off guard. Oh, old Gu, it's nothing. He gave a nervous laugh, claiming he was just waiting for a friend. But following Jiang Yan's lingering gaze, I saw him staring intently at a girl with a neat ponytail, who was busy helping out her father's roadside barbecue stall. Staring at that hardworking girl, I instantly recalled Jiang Yan's tragic destiny from my past life. In that lifetime, Jiang Yan and this girl had fallen deeply in love, to shatter her father's harsh prejudice against him, which stemmed from his notorious reputation as a school delinquent. Jiang Yan had gone through absolute hell to reform himself. He chopped off his long hair, painfully endured getting his tattoos removed, cut ties with his toxic gang, quit smoking cold turkey, and even dressed in neat, respectable clothes just to prove his worth. Yet, no matter how drastically he transformed, in the eyes of the girl's stubborn father, he would always be nothing but a dirty, worthless thug, scheming to manipulate and ruin his precious daughter. Heartbroken and exhausted from seeing Jiang Yin constantly belittled, the girl had a massive blowout with her father and ran away to live with Jiang Yin. Even though Jiang Yin's mother was genuinely thrilled, she constantly, gently urged the girl to return home and resolve things peacefully with her dad. But instead of showing a shred of understanding, the father escalated the feud and brought the police marching straight to their doorstep, right in front of the entire neighborhood. He screamed that Jiang Yan had defiled his daughter's honor, threatening to lock him up for assault. Jiang Yan's frail mother, who was already battling severe uremia and terrible complications, suffered a massive shock from the brutal confrontation, her blood pressure spiking, and she tragically collapsed and died on the spot. The father was left frozen in absolute horror. He only wanted to scare Jiang Yin away, never imagining his malicious stunt would claim an innocent life. In a single instant, their love story mutated into a blood feud. His mother had been Jiang Yan's entire world, his sole anchor, blinded by agonizing grief and explosive rage. He nearly killed the old man right then and there, even though the father eventually drowned in regret and dropped the charges. How could Jiang Yin ever live with himself if he stayed with the daughter of the man who literally caused his mother's death? In the end, the devastated lovers tore themselves apart. Not long after, Jiang Yin dropped out of school and vanished from the city entirely. Years later, I randomly ran into him in an interrogation room. He had reduced himself to a homeless, tattered wreck sleeping under bridges. The broken man had completely lost his mind, muttering a single, haunting phrase on loop, that he had to avenge his mother's death. The crushing trauma had completely incinerated his sanity. He couldn't even remember who or how to avenge, doomed to drag out his remaining days in a state of absolute madness. Recalling his hollow, lifeless eyes from that dark future, my heart ached with a suffocating, intense pain, no less tragic than what I felt for Bai Wei. That was why, even when the evidence in my past life pointed a damning finger directly toward him, I remained absolutely convinced that he was fundamentally not some irredeemable, bloodthirsty monster. Now that the heavens have granted me a second chance at life, I swear I will never let that horrific tragedy repeat itself. I plan to hand over the 100,000 renminbi bounty I secured from reporting those criminals directly to Jiang Yin, with an official, honorable commendation from the police department. The girl's father's toxic prejudice against him would undoubtedly be shattered and swept away. What on earth is going on, old goo? I'll fill you in at school tomorrow. Jiang Yin scratched his head, looking completely baffled. While the two of us were talking, a young man, leading a little boy by the hand, walked past, freezing in his tracks the second his eyes landed on me. What a coincidence. Out for a stroll with your little brother? Yeah. Z nodded silently, his face a completely blank, emotionless mask. It was as if he had no idea what kind of expression to wear. When facing me, "Hello, big brother Gu." His little brother, Yi Shi, chimed in with an adorable, sweet voice. Since I had lent his older brother a helping hand before, the sweet kid was incredibly warm and affectionate toward me. "Hey there, little Shi. What a good boy." I smiled warmly, reaching out to ruffle Yi Shi's soft hair. However, Bai Wei's sharp intuition immediately picked up on something off. Yi Zi was staring at me with a deeply unsettling, intense gaze. The moment my hand touched Yi Shi's head, Yi Zi's eyes flared with an uncontrollable, feverish yearning. He was burning with an intense, suffocating jealousy toward his own brother for being so close to me, desperately wishing he could be the one in his brother's place. The sheer force of his hidden emotions made his entire body tremble. Bai Wei was thoroughly unnerved by that bizarre, frenzied look in his eyes. She couldn't tell if it was fueled by pure, unadulterated malice, or some twisted, suffocating kind of obsession. Sensing Bai Wei's cautious stare, Yi Zi abruptly whipped his head around, piercing her with a sharp, chilling glare. Terrified, Bai Wei shrank back, hiding herself behind my shoulders, her fingers tightly gripping my sleeve for safety. The moment I looked up at Yi Zi, he instantly masked his terrifying intensity, reverting back to his usual gloomy, lifeless self. Even I couldn't comprehend what kind of dark thoughts were constantly swirling inside his head. "You two go ahead and enjoy your walk. We're heading out now." Yi Zi nodded awkwardly, bowing his head slightly as he spoke. "Bai Wei, did you really get your fill of the park? We have school tomorrow, so you'd better head to bed early tonight. I won't be whipping up any late-night snacks for you." Hearing those casual words, Z's pupils dilated in absolute shock. His lips parted as if he desperately wanted to ask something, but he ultimately held back. "I'm stuffed, let's head out." Bai Wei still seemed somewhat shaken, so Yi Zi quickly pulled me along as we walked away from the food street, continuing until his little brother gave his sleeve a firm tug. "Big brother, look at me." Only then did Yi Zi finally tear his gaze away from the end of the street, offering a rare, incredibly tender smile to his only family. Bai Wei had overindulged on the street food and was now curled up on the sofa, gently massaging her bloated stomach. I quietly slid onto the cushion right beside her, taking her petite, delicate hands and placing them over her belly, guiding her palms in a soothing, clockwise motion. Staring at my patient, intensely focused expression, Bai Wei's cheeks flushed a soft pink. This cozy, deeply comforting atmosphere made her feel infinitely more at ease than she ever did under her own parents' roof. I slipped into the kitchen to brew her a refreshing cup of honey lemon mint tea. Meanwhile, sitting alone on the sofa, Bai Wei was suddenly struck by a wave of profound insecurity. The years of emotional neglect in her toxic household made her deeply terrified that this dreamlike warmth was nothing but a fragile, fleeting illusion, fearing that when she opened her eyes tomorrow, she would be dragged right back to that cold, lifeless house. Instantly picking up on her sudden shift in mood, I leaned in and gently pressed my forehead against hers to check her temperature. Confirming she wasn't running a fever, I sat down comfortably right next to her. Honey lemon water with a touch of fresh mint. It's perfect for soothing an upset stomach. I dipped a ceramic spoon into the warm liquid, slowly bringing it to her soft lips. Though flustered, she instinctively reached out to take the cup, but I quickly stopped her, using the playful excuse that she shouldn't exert herself while full, insisting on feeding her spoon by spoon. As she swallowed, the warm, sweet and sour liquid glided down her throat, instantly settling her stomach. Watching my incredibly gentle, unwaveringly patient care, Bai Wei's eyes suddenly welled with hot tears. All the heavy, suffocating pain she had bottled up for years was gradually being melted away by this profound sense of safety. That night, Bai Wei slept more peacefully than she ever had before. In her dreams, she reunited with her late grandparents, tears of absolute happiness welling in her eyes, as she eagerly told them she had found an incredibly wonderful boy. At the very end of her dream, she held my hand tightly, waving a final peaceful goodbye to her grandparents in the sky, as the deep-seated trauma she had carried for so long slowly began to heal. Her emotional state underwent a beautiful transformation, finally granting her the long-awaited serenity she had desperately craved. The next morning, Bai Wei woke up early to prepare breakfast. Watching her bustling happily around the kitchen, I realized she seemed like an entirely different person. Her aura was bright, open, and filled with a newfound optimism. Once we finished eating, we changed into our school uniforms and headed out together. Bai Wei, let's find some time over the next couple of days to head over to your house and move all your things here. At the mention of the word house, Bai Wei's fingertips visibly trembled, her hands suddenly clenching into tight fists. She was completely terrified, having absolutely no idea how to face those two broken families again. I gently clasped her ice-cold left hand, radiating warm comfort from my palm to hers, telling her not to worry. You don't need to fear their objections. I have my ways to keep them at bay. Gu Nansheng, I really don't want to ever go back there. She squeezed my hand back tightly, her eyes shining with absolute, unwavering trust, and a desperate, silent plea. Trust me, I will never let you go back. Besides, you owe me a hefty debt right now. Until it's fully paid off, you're not allowed to run away. Bai Wei smiled softly and nodded. Having finally tasted the brightest warmth this world had to offer, she had ultimately summoned the courage to break free from her suffocating past. On the second day, Bai Wei and I arrived at school together. The rhythmic hum of students reciting their lessons echoed through the hallway. The moment Bai Wei and I took our seats, her desk mate, Tu Jin, immediately leaned in, her face bursting with curiosity. Hey. I heard you two were spotted strolling through the night market together yesterday, and apparently, it looked incredibly sweet and romantic. Is it true? Bai Wei instantly flushed a bright, bashful pink. Feigning shock, I reached out and playfully pinched Tu Jin's sun-kissed, rosy cheek. Who on earth told you that? Hurry up and spill the beans. Ow. It was Jiang Yan's little brother, Yi Shi, who told me. The kid said you were on a romantic date with a gorgeous girl. Amused, I finally let go of her cheek. A few guys in the classroom overheard the juicy gossip and immediately began to jeer and tease us. I shot them a sharp, warning glare, which instantly silenced the crowd. and got them back to reciting their morning lessons. Right at that moment, a middle-aged woman, still retaining her sharp, elegant looks, abruptly appeared at the classroom door. I glanced over and realized she was Bai Wei's biological mother. The very second her mother came into view, Bai Wei's entire body went completely rigid, and she instinctively turned to me with a helpless, panicked look. Our homeroom teacher stepped out to exchange a few words with her, then turned back toward the classroom. Bai Wei, your mother is here to see you. After receiving a reassuring nod from me, Bai Wei took a long, deep breath, stood up, and walked toward the door. The moment she stepped outside, her mother put on an incredibly apologetic, polite face. While chatting briefly with Teacher He tactfully stepped back into the classroom, while I sat there, gazing through the window at Bai Wei standing just outside. Throughout the entire exchange, she kept her head low, her lips pressed tight, remaining completely silent as her mother droned on and on in front of her. After what felt like an eternity, her mother spat out one last cold, parting remark, before turning on her heel and marching away. Bai Wei, who had just begun to show some life this morning, thanks to my promise, walked back to her desk. With her mood visibly plummeting back down to rock bottom, she shot me a deeply anxious, fragile look. I didn't press her for details, but simply offered her a firm, deeply reassuring smile. Seeing my unwavering expression, her tense shoulders finally relaxed a bit, and she slowly began to regain her composure. Hey, Bai Wei, what did your mom want to talk about? It's nothing, just some family matters. That's grown-up business. Kids shouldn't pry. As soon as morning study hall wraps up, I am taking you straight to the cafeteria to feast like absolute royalty. So for now, be a good girl and focus on your book. I use my rolled-up textbook to gently tap Tu Jin's overly curious little head, deftly defusing the awkward situation for Bai Wei. But deep down, I was already calculating my very next move. Since the dark shadow of her toxic family kept clinging to her like a relentless ghost, I had to fight tooth and nail to secure a legitimate, official way to stay right by her side at school. Just as the morning study session was winding down, I marched straight up to the teacher's podium and whispered a daring proposition into Teacher He's ear. At your age, boys and girls, your absolute priority must be your studies. But teacher, how about we make a little wager? If I manage to rank in the top 10 of our class on the upcoming final exams this week, I want you to let me switch seats so I can sit right next to her. At the mention of the top 10, Teacher He's typically dull, eyes instantly flash with excitement. He was never an old-fashioned, rigid educator. If you can actually channel the fleeting sparks of youth into a powerful drive to elevate your academic performance, then in my book, that is an absolute win. I admire your sheer confidence, kid. Deal. Secure a spot in the top 10, and I will grant your wish. I smiled, sealing the pinky promise with him before heading back to my desk. I immediately whipped open my English textbook and began studying with an almost demonic intensity. My desk mate, Huang Miao, stared at me like I was a freak, as if I had suddenly been possessed by a hyperactive spirit. I completely ignored his bewildered stares. Knowing this was a high-stakes gamble, I absolutely had to win. The second the morning bell rang, signaling the break, I kept my word and treated both Bai Wei and Tu Jin to a cafeteria run. Tu Jin greedily piled up 10 yuan worth of junk food, clearly seeking petty revenge for me pinching her cheek earlier. Noticing Bai Wei was still looking deeply melancholic, I grabbed a strawberry lollipop from the shelf and gently handed it to her. Sweets provide an instant sugar rush, which is perfect for boosting your mood. Remember what I promised you this morning. Once classes are over today, I'm going to settle everything. Bai Wei gripped the lollipop, took a couple of deep breaths, and finally let a radiant, genuine smile bloom on her face. Her earlier awkwardness toward me completely vanishing. The very moment we stepped out of the school convenience store, I spotted Jiang Yin sitting idly on the edge of concrete planter, his eyes completely glued to someone standing not too far away. The hard-working girl with a neat ponytail from the barbecue stall. He was probably so utterly transfixed by her that he didn't even notice us approaching until we were right there. My guy, if you keep staring at her like that, you're going to get labeled as a creepy stalker sooner or later. Jiang Yin snapped out of his daze in a panic, and seeing us, he stuttered out, "Oh, old goo. Hello, sister-in-law," sending a deep crimson flush across Bai Wei's face. I told Bai Wei and Tu Jin to head back to the classroom first, then turned around and sat down right next to Jiang Yan. Since I've caught you red-handed, let me teach you a trick, bro. Winning a girl's heart comes down to one single word: sincerity. But I'm not worried about Chu Wan rejecting you. It's her extremely traditional, old-school father who's the problem. He will absolutely despise this high school delinquent persona you've got going on. Jiang Yan's face instantly slumped into a deeply troubled expression. In my past life, it was precisely this rigid, toxic prejudice that drove Jiang Yan's mother to a stress-induced, fatal relapse, which ultimately pushed Jiang Yan off the deep end into utter madness. In this lifetime, I will absolutely not let that tragedy repeat itself. I have a foolproof way to change his mind about you. I happen to have a hot tip on a wanted fugitive with a massive 100,000 renminbi bounty on his head. Go report it directly to the police station. Once the cops make the arrest, all the credit and glory will belong entirely to you. With the official backing of the local police force and an academic commendation from the school, if Father Chu ever judges your style or your bad boy look again, you can just claim you're working undercover with the authorities to infiltrate local street gangs to crack cases. He will definitely start looking at you with newfound respect. Holy crap, old goo. That is an absolute masterstroke of a plan. We split that 100,000 renminbi bounty 50-50, straight down the middle. With your 50,000 share, the financial burden of your mother's medical treatments will be lifted, leaving you with plenty of time to court his daughter. This intel is 100 solid. You in? Hell yeah. Real brothers stick together. And with those words of yours, say no more. Having just locked down the rescue plan with Jiang Yan, I saw Chu Wan muster up all her courage and start walking over. I tactfully backed into a quiet corner to observe them. Even though Jiang Yan was a towering 6 feet tall, the moment he came face to face with Chu Wan, he turned as incredibly clumsy as a guilty elementary schooler, stuttering over his words. As it turned out, Chu Wan had once called the cops to help bail him out of a tight spot. She had assumed this rumored school delinquent was some terrifying, vicious monster, only to find a tongue-tied, incredibly sweet and innocent boy. Watching Jiang Yan follow behind her like a devoted puppy, I felt like a proud parent finally seeing his son grow up. But the second I turned around, I noticed Yi Zi standing silently in the shadows nearby. I'm really sorry about what happened last Friday night. Are you okay? I'm perfectly fine. Here, I'm returning this to you. I sent your jacket to the dry cleaners, and I'll bring it back to you as soon as I pick it up. I took the freshly washed handkerchief from him, gave his shoulder a friendly, reassuring pat, and told him that he could come find me whenever he needed help, before turning to head back to the classroom. The moment I stepped inside, I playfully snatched the chocolate bar that Tu Jin had been secretly hiding under her desk. Ignoring her dramatic whines and protests, I handed the sweet treat straight to Bai Wei. With a gentle smile, Bai Wei broke the chocolate in half and shared it with Tu Jin. The entire classroom felt warm, vibrant, and full of youthful energy. As I sat back down in my seat, I pulled out my phone and saw a few documents my mother had sent over. It was a formal employment contract for a domestic helper, with every single clause laid out with absolute clarity. A monthly salary of 6,000 renminbi, along with complimentary room and board, and a strict prohibition against any tasks that could harm her physical well-being or mental health. Scanning the document, a massive wave of relief washed over me. This was far more than just a simple work contract. It was a bulletproof legal shield I had custom-made specifically to protect Bai Wei the moment she signed this contract, proving she was an adult over 18, with a stable income to support an independent life. Her abusive parents' legal guardianship would lose all its power, preventing them from ever controlling or exploiting her again. If those two toxic households refused to give her a safe harbor, then I would use the full force of the law to build her one, and personally drag her out of that suffocating abyss. After double-checking that every clause in the contract was flawless, I sent the meticulously organized profile of the wanted fugitive straight to Jiang Yan. Staring at the brilliant sunlight flooding through the window, I knew a brand new life for both me and Bai Wei had finally officially begun. The moment classes ended and we walked out of the school gates, Bai Wei's entire body suddenly went completely rigid. She took a sharp step back, instinctively shielding herself behind my back. I followed her panicked gaze, only to see her biological father, Bai Changfeng, waiting there. No doubt because Bai Wei hadn't been home for 2 days, and her mother, unable to force her back this morning, had turned to her father to do the dirty work. I've got your back. If you want to talk to him, do so. If you don't, just leave him to me. You don't have to worry about a single thing. Bai Wei's pale cheeks, battered by the chilly spring breeze, looked like crumpled parchment paper. She took 2 incredibly deep breaths, forcing her tense, trembling muscles to relax, and continued walking forward by my side. We intentionally ignored Bai Changfeng's presence, marching straight past the school gates. But we hadn't even gone a few yards before heavy, rushing footsteps caught up to us from behind. Bai Wei, wait up. Your mother tells me you haven't been home in days. What on earth is going on with you? Bai Changfeng demanded, his eyes shifting away from Bai Wei to lock onto me, sizing me up with a critical, calculating gaze. Bai Wei bit her lip, her entire frame trembling too violently to speak, without a single shred of hesitation, right in front of her tyrannical father. I reached out and firmly grasped her ice-cold hand. This defiant gesture left Bai Changfeng utterly stunned. Bai Wei also looked up at me in absolute shock, her eyes filled with terror, terrified that her father would unleash his wrath upon me. What is the meaning of this? You should know the meaning of this better than anyone. Last Friday, during that horrific torrential downpour, she didn't have a single roof over her head to shield her from the storm. So you tell me, what is the meaning of this? Who do you think you are? I'm her classmate. Let go of her this instant, and stay away from my daughter. You mean the daughter who, on that freezing, stormy night, you and your ex-wife would rather watch shiver in the rain than offer her a single night of shelter? Whatever shelter you provide is no longer a home to her. For a selfish, cold-hearted hypocrite like him, I had absolutely zero intention of showing any respect. Insolent brat. Who the hell do you think you are? Trying to lecture me on how to live my life? Our family business is none of your damn concern. Let go of her hand this instant. If you don't, I will personally track down your teachers and your parents. Oh, please go right ahead. In fact, how about I call my parents right this second? If you're eager to hear them tear you to shreds over the phone, I would be more than happy to oblige. You're harassing a female student. If you don't let go of her, I'm calling the police. Filing a false police report will get you detained, you know. Law enforcement isn't your personal security detail. I highly suggest you calm yourself down. Unable to win the argument, Bai Changfeng snapped, reaching out aggressively to drag Bai Wei away by force. My gaze went icy cold as I swerved my hand, clamping down hard on his wrist. The lock-and-control techniques I had mastered in the police force in my past life gave me a grip strength that far surpassed any ordinary high schooler. Bai Changfeng let out a sharp, painful gasp. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly 3 things, and you'd better listen very carefully. First, legal custody of Bai Wei belongs to her mother. You have absolutely no right to coerce, control, or lay a single finger on her. So let go of her now. Second, when she needed protection the most, you stood by and watched her get kicked out into a raging storm. By what right and with what face? Do you stand here today acting like a caring father? Third, she's an adult now, fully capable of standing on her own 2 feet. She doesn't need a single ounce of your charity. Now, if there's nothing else, we have a lunch date to catch. Good day. With that, I forcefully shoved his hand away. And if you dare to keep harassing her, I will personally march over to your company with a massive protest banner, making sure your coworkers and bosses hear all about how you abandoned your own biological daughter in the middle of a torrential storm. And I bet a public scandal like that would absolutely ruin your chances at any future promotion. I had struck the perfect, fatal blow to a vain, career-obsessed egoist like him. Bai Changfeng stood entirely frozen on the spot, rendered completely speechless by my brutal verbal beatdown. For some reason, on our walk back home, Bai Wei kept stealing quiet, lingering glances at me. She felt like I was someone incredibly familiar, yet entirely new, radiating an aura of profound maturity that didn't belong to an ordinary high schooler at all. I'm really sorry, Bai Wei. I lost my temper back there, and went ahead and lashed out at your father, without even considering how it might make you feel. Now I'm suddenly feeling a bit guilty about it. After all, he is still your biological father, and my aggressive confrontation might have put you in a very awkward, painful position. Actually, I'm happy. Incredibly happy. She gently squeezed my hand, her fingertips tracing soft, comforting circles over my knuckles. She cast her eyes down when you stood like a shield in front of me and spoke up for me without a single shred of hesitation. Even though you're just a high school student yourself, you dare to stand up to my father like that. It truly made me so happy. She finally looked up at me, and it was only then that I realized tears had been silently streaming down her face the entire time. I pulled out my clean handkerchief and gently dabbed away the tears from her red-rimmed eyes. If you're so happy, why are you crying, silly? She didn't offer any explanation, but simply locked eyes with me and let a beautiful, radiant smile break through. Shining within those falling tears was a complete, final liberation from her dark past, as well as the pure joy of embarking on entirely new life. This silly girl was crying and laughing all at once. But shedding tears isn't necessarily a bad thing. Being able to laugh after a good cry is the truest sign of healing. Listening to my soothing, gentle words, Bai Wei felt the suffocating thorn that had pierced her heart for years finally dissolve into nothingness. Once we got home, I scooped out 2 massive, steaming bowls of braised ribs and taro over rice from the cooker. This is way too much. I'll never be able to finish all this. Well, there's a special kind of hunger called your landlord thinks you're starving. Just eat up and don't worry. Even if you gain weight and hit 100 pounds, my home will always have a place reserved just for you. Besides, if you actually do put on a few pounds, at worst, I'll just become your hardcore personal trainer to help you shred the weight. Don't torture yourself just to maintain a certain physique. Girls with a little softness are incredibly cute. Take Jean, for example. Her cheeks feel so soft and squishy when pinched. So if I eat until I get all chubby, won't I just get bullied and have my cheeks pinched by you every single day? How could I ever bring myself to do that? Furthermore, you are officially my employee now. If I dare to bully you, that counts as workplace harassment. If you go to the Labor Bureau and sue me, I won't even be able to afford the fines. But we don't even have a formal contract. So what legal basis would I even have to sue you? Who on earth said we don't have one? I set my chopsticks down, walked over to the printer, and placed a formal document directly in front of her. This official paperwork is something I prepared for you long ago. Just sign your name on the dotted line once you're done eating. By the way, gaze at the signature on the contract in utter disbelief. My parents' signature. Did you actually talk to my mother about this? For this to be 100 legally binding, your mother had to sign off on it. So, did she say anything else to you? As a matter of fact, she did. She said if you fail to take proper care of me, she will personally fire you. Particularly this specific clause right here, managing the employer's daily living conditions. For instance, making sure the bed is warm and cozy at night. It is your solemn duty to warm up the sheets for me. One look at this, and I can tell it's a totally unfair, dictatorial clause. That kind of premium service is going to cost you extra. Seeing her shed her usual timid, self-conscious shell, and even learn how to playfully banter with me. I couldn't help but burst into a hearty laugh. This contract, which served as her declaration of independence, had finally and securely placed her under my protective wing. A warm, cozy atmosphere enveloped the dining table. Bai Wei flipped through the pages of the document spread before her. At first, she had assumed this was just a light-hearted joke of mine, but she quickly realized the terms were incredibly detailed and shockingly professional. No way. Are you seriously planning to pay me the exact salary listed here? Of course. It's written in black and white with an official signature. It is 100 legally binding. If I don't pay you exactly what is promised, and you decide to take legal action against me later, I could be forced to pay you multiple times that amount in damages. This is too much. We shouldn't do this. Let's just forget about this contract entirely. Observing her flustered, anxious expression, I calmly took a slow sip of my milk, having already mapped out every detail of this plan in my head. This contract isn't just some childish game, or some pretend house play between the two of us. Its actual, critical purpose is to shield you from the potential storm brewing with your parents in the near future. At the mere mention of her parents, I instantly noticed her shoulders give a subtle, almost imperceptible shudder, her eyes suddenly pooling with deep anxiety. My parents? What on earth does this contract have to do with them? Even though you've technically just crossed into adulthood, without a stable, independent source of income, you will remain completely under their thumb legally. However, according to Article 18 of the Civil Code, as long as you earn a stable living that is sufficient to fully support yourself, you are legally recognized as possessing full capacity for civil conduct. I quickly swiped through my phone screen, brought up the specific legal clauses, and held them up right before her eyes. To put it simply, as long as you hold this official job, you have the absolute legal right to refuse any forced intervention or control from your parents. If they ever try to coerce you again, you can weaponize the law to defend yourself. Is that really true? An outsider could never begin to comprehend the invisible, suffocating torture of her highly toxic family. That relentless mental abuse had once pushed her to the absolute brink of despair. But at this very moment, as she stared at the legal text, I finally saw the dark shadow in her eyes dissolve completely, replaced by a vibrant spark of hope she had never shown before. So now do you see how crucial this is? Once we're done eating, be a good girl and sign your name. But still, 6,000 yuan a month is an insanely large amount of money. Even my own mother only brings home 3,000 a month. I really haven't even mastered the basic skills required of a professional housekeeper. How about we cut the salary in half instead? You silly girl, you're eating my food and living under my roof. In the end, won't I just be recovering most of this money back from you anyway? This figure is purely written to fool outsiders. Technically, all the funds will eventually flow right back into my pocket. Well, that makes me feel so much better, seeing her instantly relax. She happily dug into the bowl of delicious spare ribs, as if every single grain of rice had suddenly become incredibly sweet and delicious. I couldn't resist teasing her just a little bit more. I'm just playing with you. I won't shortchange you by a single penny. If you honestly feel like it's too much, then from now on, we'll just pay for all our household expenses out of your salary, so I can finally experience the thrilling sensation of being a spoiled, kept man. Deal. I, by way, solemnly promise that from this day forward, I will use my hard-earned salary to pamper and support my classmate, Gu Nancheng, for the rest of his life. No backing out. I'm taking a video as official proof. After finishing her meal in high spirits, she signed the contract, even softly humming a cheerful little melody, as she playfully nudged me out of the kitchen, slipping on some rubber gloves to enthusiastically wash the dishes herself. As a peaceful silence settled back over the living room, I suddenly remembered the soothing medicinal charm I brought back from my grandparents' place last night. The elders always said placing it under your pillow guarantees a deep, peaceful sleep. I had been so incredibly busy yesterday that it completely slipped my mind. I stepped into the cozy guest room, where the bedding had already been meticulously made and arranged, a faint, clean fragrance lingering gently in the air. I walked directly toward the head of the bed, reaching out to lift the pillow, but my gaze instantly froze. A cold, menacing paring knife was lying silently beneath the fabric. My pupils dilated in sudden, sheer shock. This knife was an exact match to the weapon that the forensic investigators in my past life had identified as the instrument of her tragic death. This absolutely did not belong to my house. From the moment she wandered through the pouring rain until she arrived here, she must have been secretly carrying this weapon on her person the entire time. A barrage of haunting memories from my past life came crashing violently back into my mind. The theory of her committing suicide was instantly and completely ruled out, because the angle of her fatal wound made it physically impossible. But if the murder weapon was actually something she carried herself, then all those individuals who lacked a weapon of their own, and whom I had previously cleared of suspicion, the bullied Yi, the passing thugs, the vagrants, the delivery drivers, or even any random passerby, since the blade was already on her. Anyone passing through that area on the night of the crime could have snatched the knife and killed her. Every single theory I had previously constructed was completely shattered at this very moment. That knife isn't for her. Having finished the dishes, she was now standing at the doorway, though I hadn't heard her approach. Seeing me standing there frozen with the pillow in my hands, and seeing the exposed paring knife lying on the mattress, her eyes instantly flooded with a wave of sheer, overwhelming panic, terrified that I would completely misunderstand her. It's okay. You don't have to explain anything to me. a girl living all on her own. It's actually a very good thing to be this protective of yourself. I pulled her tightly into a warm embrace, feeling the rigid tension and vulnerability in her body, while the unspoken promise in my deep, resolute gaze assured her, "Don't worry, everything is going to be fine. I am right here with you. In this lifetime, I swear I will never let that horrific tragedy repeat itself, so that we can stay together, leaving absolutely no room for regrets ever again."